I never thought I'd find myself standing in that doorway, watching the woman I loved betray me with another man. My heart pounded in my chest, but it wasn't from sorrow. It was rage. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the hose, cranked the water to full blast, and unleashed my revenge. The screams, the chaos, the sheer panic. It was a symphony of justice. As the water drenched them, I knew they'd never forget the day they crossed me. This wasn't just payback, it was a warning. I'm not the man you betray and walk away from. Friday, July 15th, 2016. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. Oh no. Not again. I slowly opened my eyes, thinking for the millionth time about why I chose that song for my alarm. The answer came back to me. I thought it was funny, and I hoped it would get a reaction from my wife, Julie. The first morning it went off, I let it play until she finally sat up and asked why I wasn't turning it off. Gotcha! That was my sign to start. With my eyes shut, I began to move my head slowly. Then I picked up the pace. Before long, I was doing the goofy dance from Night at the Roxbury, which is really just a fun head bob. That got the response I hoped for. She hit my arm and made a little snorting noise while trying not to laugh, but my job wasn't finished yet. I had to sit up a bit and block her as Julie tried to lean over me to grab my phone. I waited until she was close, leaning over me, and then made my move. I quickly leaned up and pressed my lips against her shirt. At the same time, I wrapped my arms around her and rolled us both onto her side of the bed. "Hey, stop that!" she laughed. "Leave it alone, Sam!" She playfully tapped my head, but she wasn't really serious as I gently teased her. Soon, her protests changed to soft sounds as she began to enjoy it. At that moment, my phone had gone into snooze mode, but it suddenly played again while we were in the moment. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. Ah! Turn that off! I slowed down as if I was thinking about stopping. With my mouth full of her shirt, I started to nod my head again. "You silly," she laughed. That marked the beginning of a wonderful morning as we rolled around, tickling each other and playfully fighting over my phone. The fun led to sweet moments together. It was just right. That was Monday. Now it's Friday and there's no chance of that happening again. I was really tired of that song. What is Love by Hathaway? I wished I could change it. I reached out and turned off my phone, then sat up. The view around me looked a bit different from Monday. I was in the guest room. Julie mentioned that her throat hurt and she might be getting ill. It's odd how, when I'm not feeling well, I am moved to the guest room. Yet, when she's not well, I'm still sent to the guest room. I thought about going to work for a moment, but quickly changed my mind. It was only 5 a.m. Julie would sleep until 6:30 before she began her day. I had to wake up early because I took the train to New York every morning. Julie worked at a hospital in Trenton as a clerk in the billing department. Since I didn't feel like doing anything serious today, I decided to have some fun. I got up and put on my shorts and a t-shirt. I moved quietly into our bedroom so I wouldn't wake Julie. I looked at my shoes but chose to wear my fuzzy slippers by the bed instead. Comfort today. I got into my old Ford Taurus and drove through our quiet neighborhood. I passed the train station where I usually park to take a train into the city. I had some time to spare, so I decided to stop at an IHOP. I wasn't sure what I wanted to eat since I had tried almost everything on the menu before. When the waitress came to my table, I still couldn't decide. So I just gave in. "Are you ready to order, sir?" she asked. "Do you need a little more time?" asked the tired-looking middle-aged woman. "Just give me one of everything," I replied. "Excuse me?" "I mean one of everything on the breakfast menu. All the meals, sides, drinks, everything." Okay. I could tell she was nervous that I might be joking or planning to leave without paying. So I added, "Here's my credit card. You can go ahead and charge me. Also, please add a 50% tip for yourself and send the food as it's ready." Now she was smiling. "Yes, sir. Would you like to sit at a bigger table? You might need more room." Great idea, Flo. Her name tag said Janet, but she didn't say anything when I called her the wrong name. I think I could have called her anything, and she would just smile and say, "Sure." She took me to a big table for 10 people right in the middle of the restaurant. She moved like she wanted to pull out my chair for me, but then stopped and turned a little red. I couldn't help but smile at how joyful she seemed. I must have made her week. The restaurant was busy, with many people arriving as breakfast time picked up. I probably looked funny sitting alone at a big table meant for 10, with dishes piled high all around me. I received a lot of curious glances, and I even saw some of the younger customers taking pictures. I started to think about how much attention I was getting on social media. Around 8 o'clock, the restaurant was really busy. One man with his family of 6 was waiting for a table. He kept looking at me with a frown because I was taking up a lot of room. He waved his hands around angrily while he spoke to the hostess. So I decided to take my time. I hadn't eaten much yet. I was scrolling through my phone, occasionally using my fork to grab a piece of food here and there. I set my phone aside and slowly moved from one plate to another, taking a small bite from each. Sometimes I closed my eyes and pretended to enjoy the food a lot, but most of the time I kept looking at Angry Dad. His face started to get redder, and his wife tried to calm him by placing her hand on his arm. He pushed her hand away and took a step closer to me. I stood up quickly. My chair fell over with a loud noise. I spread my arms wide and shouted at him, "Do you want to fight? Come at me! This is my IHOP. All your pancakes are mine." You could hear a pin drop. Everyone in the restaurant was looking at me with wide eyes. Some young people were recording me with their phones. Out of the corner of my eye, I looked at my tables. Without taking my gaze off Angry Dad, I reached down and picked up some blueberry and vanilla pancakes. I took a big bite, making a mess all over my face. I lifted my hand over the table and let the pancakes fall. Then I walked straight out the door. Angry Dad's son smiled and gave me a thumbs up when his dad wasn't watching. Once I was in the parking lot, I wished I had taken a napkin, but that would have messed up my exit. I wiped my hand on a shirt in the back of my car and drove away. For the second time, I realized that my situation could feel really freeing. I noticed that my actions were getting more out of control. Not long ago, the thought of shouting at a stranger in public would have seemed crazy to me. That kind of thing is what you see on a talk show. When you feel like your actions don't mean anything, it's easy to lose your grip on things. I'll explain that more later. It was just 8:30, and I had a few hours to fill. I thought about going to a movie, but I had already watched them all. There was a mall nearby, and I remembered there would be a flash mob at 9:15. I could go see it and maybe even join in, but then again, maybe not. The flash mob was mostly kids enjoying their summer, and I felt a bit old at 27. What did I do about it? Nothing at all. I just sat in my car, not even paying attention to the radio, lost in my thoughts. At 11:30, I finally shook myself out of it and went to Home Depot. I picked up the longest garden hose they had, along with a nozzle I knew worked really well. It had a simple design that made the water spray in a nice, tight line. There was no way to turn off the water, so I had to squeeze the hose to stop it. I drove home, getting there shortly after 12:15, just right. As I expected, Julie's Honda was in the driveway, along with a red Porsche Cayenne that I knew belonged to Dr. Richard Peters. Some people might find his name funny, but I just call him Dr. Dick. I parked behind the Porsche and carried the hose to the faucet at the front of the house. Before turning on the water, I went inside to the garage. I could hear some noises coming from the second floor, but I knew they wouldn't notice me. I grabbed a pair of pliers and carefully squeezed the end of the metal nozzle until it was much smaller. After that, I stepped outside, connected it to the hose, and turned the water on full force. The 100-foot hose was more than long enough to reach the stairs and our bedroom door. On the way to the door, I picked up a small stool from the kitchen that Julie used to reach things on the higher shelves. I set it down carefully in front of the door, glancing back at the wall across the hallway to make sure it was in the right place. This was the most important part of my plan. Then I stood behind it, holding the crimped hose, and slowly opened the door. The view was still shocking. I mostly saw Dr. Dick's back moving up and down, while my wife's legs were hanging limply. They weren't being too noisy, just some grunts and the occasional or yes. My loving wife and Dr. Dick were having their usual afternoon meeting. I had seen this scene before and didn't want to watch any longer, so I thought it was time to change things up. They still didn't know I was there until I turned on the hose. That nozzle? I had made some changes to it. From 10 feet away? I can honestly say it hurt a lot. The first thing I felt was not cold or wet, but a sharp sting. I acted quickly and went straight for the sensitive spot. Dr. Dick let out a surprised shout and tried to move away from the pain. He tumbled off the side of the bed, and in that moment I had an unexpected view of my wife. She looked surprised and a bit lost. Her confusion changed to shock as a strong water spray came at her. The water wouldn't really hurt her, but that area is delicate. She yelped and rolled off the other side of the bed with a thump. By this time, Dr. Dick was getting up and looking at what was happening. I think his first thought was to calm me down. "Samuel, I know this must look—" "Ah!" It's really hard to talk when a strong stream is hitting you in a sensitive place. He tried to move his body to dodge it at first. Julie was peeking over the bed with a look of shock on her face. Dr. Dick saw that I wasn't going to back down, so he shouted and got ready to rush at me. Have you ever played that fair game where you aim water at a clown's mouth? I can tell you that playing for real is even more exciting. I hit him right in the mouth while he was shouting. He took a deep breath, but then he started to gasp and choke. He bent over with his hands on his knees while I kept spraying the hose. Ear, eye, bald spot, mouth. I looked at Julie and asked her to lower her head. Ear, mouth, waist, 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 waist. After a while, Dr. Dick managed to catch his breath. He ran at me as fast as he could with his arms stretched out. His mouth and eyes were squeezed shut. He was charging right at me, ready to tackle me down. If I hadn't seen it coming, his plan might have worked. I sprayed some mist in his face to keep him from seeing, then I moved to the side until I was just resting in the doorway. This was when the step stool became useful. Dr. Dick rushed through the doorway and tripped over the stool. His speed pushed him forward, and he ended up crashing straight into the wall. The way I placed the stool and where I stood was very important. The wooden beams in the wall are 16 inches apart. Instead of hitting his head hard on a 2x4, Dr. Dick was lying confused and in a state of shock, halfway in the hallway and halfway in the bathroom, stuck between two wall beams. That really took the will to fight out of him. I pinched the hose to stop the water, then I stepped over to put my foot on. Dr. Dick felt a hand on his lower back, steadying him. My loving wife noticed that things had quieted down and decided to speak up. "Sam, I'm really sorry. I don't know how to explain myself." I have to give her some credit. We had talked about this many times, and she never tried to downplay what had happened. She never blamed me. She never claimed it was the first time, that it meant nothing, or that it was just a moment. Though she wasn't very open, she didn't really tell any untruths either. But I wasn't ready to walk down this familiar road today. She moved a little closer, wrapped in a blanket. One hand was at her chest, and the other was holding the bottom up so she wouldn't fall. She looked terrible, wet, crying, and mumbling. Her words were nothing but a blur to me. I was more focused on how near she was getting to me and Dr. Dick. "Sweetheart, please talk to me. Please, tell me there's something I can do. I hope I haven't messed everything up." I stayed silent. Dr. Dick was as quiet as a mouse, maybe wishing I would forget he was there. Not a chance. I waited until she was about 3 steps away. This next moment needed to be timed just right. Step 1. As she took a step, I turned on the water, spraying a blast right at her. She automatically raised both hands to shield herself and lost the blanket that wrapped around her feet. While she was still in the air, I focused on Dr. Dick. He had his back turned. Step 2, strong enema. As a straight guy, this made me a bit uneasy, but sometimes we have to push our limits for our work. Fortunately, he was calm, not ready for the surprise that was about to come. Things shifted quickly when he let out a loud squeal and started to squirm, but he couldn't get free. Julie was now on her hands and knees after she fell, her legs still caught in the blanket. She was just close enough for me to reach out with my other hand and grab a handful of her hair. I wanted to make sure she stayed close for what was about to happen. Step 3, count to 8. Step 4, let go. I leaped back suddenly, releasing both Julie's hair and the hose. Dr. Peter was holding his breath, trying to delay what was about to happen, but what goes in must come out. The nozzle came out, followed by a spray of, well, you can imagine. Julie, just a few feet away and at eye level, didn't have to guess. She really shouldn't have had her mouth open. I watched Julie gag, and Dr. Dick quietly crying for a moment before I walked away. I was halfway to my car when I paused. With my small act of payback done, I suddenly felt empty inside. Getting into the car felt like a huge challenge, and choosing where to go was even harder. I didn't know where to go, what to do, or even if it mattered. I felt lost. Instead of getting in my car, I walked 3 doors down to my neighbor Ted's house. He had a key hidden in a fake rock by a window. I went upstairs to his room and opened his bedside table. Inside, I found the Glock 17 he kept there. I picked it up, I put it in my mouth. Then, I made a choice. Friday, July 15th, 2016. What is love? Please don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. Not anymore. I slowly sat up in bed. Oh no, when will this all be over? The first day was like any other day. I woke up at 5 a.m. in the guest room. I put on the suit I had picked out the night before and traveled into New York. I went to my office on Wall Street. Well, it was more like my little cubicle. I worked as an analyst at Broadwell and Marks. My job was to look into companies and financial products. I would look for the best and worst options. Then, I would share what I found with a junior team member. They would check my work along with that of other analysts. After that, the junior team member would give their own suggestions to a senior team member who would decide what to buy and sell. The senior associate always took the credit for any success. If things went wrong, he blamed his team for their mistakes. When you tell people you work on Wall Street, they think you must be living the high life, reaching for the stars. But I felt like I was stuck in a low place. I started my job right after finishing college at 21, graduating from Rutgers with a finance degree. That degree helped me get in, but in the 6 years since then, I hadn't moved up very much. Getting ahead on Wall Street is just as much about the people you know as it is about what you know. I know I'm not the best at making connections, but I've watched others who are less skilled than me move up in their jobs faster than I have. Even so, I earned a good salary. My career might have been moving slower than I wanted, but I was sure I would reach the top one day. I hoped that I was still young enough to enjoy what I saw. I had a busy day looking at financial papers and got home a little after 6. When I walked in, I could smell something tasty cooking in the kitchen. Since she didn't have to travel for hours each day, Julie left for work later and came home earlier. She worked at a hospital, but she wasn't a doctor or a nurse, so her hours were more normal. Julie usually cooked dinner during the week, and I tried to take over on weekends if I wasn't working late. That happened quite a bit. Tonight was our breakfast for dinner night. There's nothing like the smell of bacon cooking. Wow, what is that amazing smell? I said. Bacon and eggs are ready, and the home fries are in the oven. I set the toaster when I heard you arrive, she replied. I wasn't just talking about the food, I said, getting close to her and taking a deep breath. She shivered a bit. Julie always relaxes when you touch her neck. I loved to softly breathe on the back of her neck and gently kiss the fine hair there. She would lean her head back without thinking, her mouth slightly open, letting out soft sighs and shivers. While the smell of bacon is hard to beat, it can't compare to the clean, pleasing scent of a woman. Julie always had that special way of smelling wonderful without even trying. Women would definitely say it's not easy at all. It takes a lot of effort. I believe I can speak for my friends when I say that we really appreciate what they do. Oh no, stop that, Sam. Save it for later. I'm hungry. So am I. I had started kissing her neck, but now I was playfully nibbling a bit. I joked with Julie that she seemed to like it like a vampire. Forget it. We can warm up the food later, she said as she turned to give me a passionate kiss. But then I had to slow things down. No, you're right. You took the time to cook and we shouldn't waste it. I hurried to the cabinet and took out some plates. Julie looked a bit upset, but also playful. You're going to pay for this later, you know. Don't get too carried away with that mouth of yours. I guess your sore throat is better now? Just a little scare, but now you're back in our bed where you should be tonight. We didn't rush to bed after dinner. We snuggled on the couch and watched some TV. Julie really likes a show called Trauma. It claims to be a serious medical drama set in a trauma center, but it seemed more interested in showing the personal lives of the doctors and nurses. Julie mentioned that even though the show was very over the top, there was some truth to the idea that hospitals had their share of relationships. It seems that who was dating whom was a constant topic of conversation in the billing offices where she worked. Hearing about the behavior of my wife's coworkers made me uneasy, but I didn't blame her for what they did. Any job filled with a lot of stress and high pay can create a strong temptation for people. I worked on Wall Street, surrounded by men who were very confident and didn't think twice about being unfaithful to their wives and girlfriends. Some days, the lobby of our office on the 30th floor was filled with well-dressed women waiting for lunch dates. It felt like a special day just for them. Their boldness was surprising. Around 10 p.m., we followed our usual routine, locking up and turning off the lights. We shared a warm moment together, and I fell asleep feeling happy. To be honest, I've forgotten more than I can recall about that first day. It was just a regular weekday in the life of a happily married man. Before going to sleep, I decided to change my alarm on my phone to one of the usual sounds. I had been waking up to the same Hathaway song for a week, and I was tired of it. Friday, July 15th, 2016, Day 2. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. What is going on? I really don't like mornings. Once I start moving, I feel better, but getting out of bed is hard. Usually, I need my coffee before I feel like myself. This morning, I felt sleepy at first, but quickly turned confused. Why was I in the guest room? Didn't I set that alarm? Why was my alarm ringing on a Saturday when I didn't have to go to work? Have you ever had a dream that felt so real, like a normal day? You wake up, get ready for school or work. At some moment during the day, you just wake up? That was my first thought. I had never experienced a dream that lasted an entire day before. Usually in my dreams, I ended up losing my clothes in a public place. Could that be what happened now? This felt so real. Did I actually dream an entire day? It seemed like I did. On the chair in the guest room, there was the suit I had set out on Thursday night. Or was it last night? I walked over to it. Same suit, same shirt, same tie. I grabbed the shirt and took a quick sniff. It didn't smell used at all. The suit was neat and still wrapped up from the cleaners. That was strange. I brushed off the odd feeling and got dressed. I was really annoyed that I had spent 9 hours dreaming. My mind could be so frustrating. It could have at least imagined a nice office for me. Maybe even my new boss, Scarlett Johansson, could have been a little friendly. The drive to the New Jersey Transit station didn't feel familiar at all. I had taken that route so many times that it would be odd if I didn't feel a sense of déjà vu. But the train was different. I got on the third car and chose a seat on the east side, which was my usual spot. I didn't have any special belief about it. The third car stopped right in front of the newsstand where I bought my morning paper, Wall Street Journal, of course. I just walked in and sat down in the first empty seat I could see. The problems began right after we left Trenton. A young girl with blonde hair sat down next to me. I recognized her from a dream I had. She looked like many other young commuters, dressed in simple clothes and carrying a backpack. She was busy texting and had earbuds in. Nothing stood out much about her, except for her ponytail, which showed off her ears. Her earlobes were stretched so much they could fit a toilet paper tube, though of course she wasn't actually using empty rolls of Charmin. They wore earrings of a special kind. I remembered her well from the dream I had last night. I thought about how her ears might look like cooked spaghetti with the rings taken out. I also wondered about her and her boyfriend's relationship. I must have been staring because she noticed and called me out in the typical way New Yorkers do. What are you staring at, you idiot? Does he do stuff with them? Oh, no. Did I say that out loud? What did you just say? Nothing. I was just thinking out loud. Sorry for bothering you. I quickly moved to the back of the train car, hearing a stream of insults and threats behind me. Most of the other passengers didn't even glance up. Just another day on the train? I sat down, feeling confused. Was it the same girl? It must be, but how could I ask her? I was also worried she might be angry with me. Were you in my dream last night? No way that could be true. Was it just a dream? Maybe I got my days mixed up. Was yesterday Thursday? But the clothes were still there. I was driving myself nuts, so I decided to take my mind off things with a routine. Every day on my way to work, I read the newspaper, and that solved it. It was the same old paper. My imagination can't be this wild. I didn't dream that I read every article in the whole newspaper. I flipped through it quickly, not trusting what I saw. I remembered every article. I had read them. They might not have seemed important back then, but there was no way I could read the paper and not know I had seen it the day before. The rest of that day is just a blur. I'm pretty sure I went to work. I moved through the day like a zombie, or maybe it was more like a small dog, wide-eyed and a little shaky. Every 15 minutes felt like another moment I had already experienced. I couldn't stop thinking about things happening right in front of me. It really felt like I was going crazy. Friday, July 15th, 2016. Day 3. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, no more. I suddenly woke up, realizing I was in the guest bedroom, and I yelled. It wasn't a soft scream, it sounded very strong, it was more like a lion's roar. My wife hurried into the room. Did you hear that? It sounded like a woman screaming. She rushed to the window looking for a girl in trouble. That was me. What? Did you hurt yourself? Are you okay? No, I think I'm losing my mind, Julie, I said weakly. What do you mean? You're making me worried, honey. I paused for a moment before I spoke. If I was going to tell anyone, it would be my wife. But saying it out loud felt like a huge step. I worried that I might be having a serious breakdown. I didn't want to frighten my wife. I was afraid she might think I was losing my mind. I keep waking up on the same day. This is the third time I found myself in the guest room on July 15th. I thought I was just mixed up yesterday, but now I see it's really happening. Julie looked worried. She wanted to support me, but I could tell she was unsure. I understood why. If I were in her place, I might not believe me either. How can I show her the truth? Sweetheart, she said, it could be stress. Maybe you need to take a day off and relax. Are you sure it wasn't just a bad dream you had last night? You're still in bed. It seems like you just woke up and yelled. Then an idea popped into my head. Get ready. I'll show you. I've looked at today's newspaper twice already. Come with me to the corner store and you'll see. I have to give her some credit. Usually, she would still be in bed. She didn't argue. Instead, she quickly put on some clothes. Her husband was yelling and saying strange things, and she handled it really well. She noticed I was very upset and wanted to help me in any way she could. I really loved her. I felt much better knowing Julie was with me. I felt really sure of myself as we drove to the nearest gas station to pick up a copy of the Journal. We went home and sat at the kitchen table to get started. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I was wrong. I suggested that Julie pick an article randomly, and I would tell her facts from it that I shouldn't have known without reading it. Even though I had gone through the newspaper a couple of times in the past few days, I hadn't remembered every detail. When Julie picked an article, I could usually explain what it was about and mention a statistic or name from it. But sometimes I couldn't. I didn't expect to be asked questions later. There were a few parts that Julie had to read to me before I could remember them. It was even more frustrating because most of the articles were about money. Julie pointed out that I should have known some of the details. For example, if an article talked about Apple's earnings for the second quarter, it was easy to guess that they would mention the sales of the new iPhone. If I could share some exact sales numbers and stock predictions, well, I did have a job on Wall Street. This is so awkward. It was a bit unclear, but honestly, you knew more than I expected. I can tell this is really affecting you. I'm going to call Susan and take a day off. I don't think you should be by yourself. Susan was in charge of billing at Julie's hospital. I knew it would be easy to get the day off. Julie was one of the most honest and caring people I had ever known. I had never heard her tell a lie. Her bosses really admired her. She didn't have many jobs, but the ones she did have, her employers wanted to keep her around. While I was slowly trying to move up in my job, Julie was already the assistant director of the billing department at St. Gertrude's. The hospital staff was looking for a way to give her a better job before someone from a big company could take her away. She walked back into the kitchen, where I was feeling down. "Come on, Sam," she said, pulling me into the living room and sitting close to me on the couch. I lay down with my head resting on her lap while she gently ran her fingers through my hair. I shut my eyes and tried to relax my mind. I had been thinking hard in the kitchen about how to show what was really happening, but there was nothing special. I thought about taking her to work. Maybe that would help. But nothing really exciting happened that I could see coming. She was being very kind, but asking her to take the train to New York just to listen to me complain seemed too much. We spent the day talking, trying to stay cheerful. I think Julie hoped that if she could distract me, I would feel better and stop worrying. She did a wonderful job of keeping my mind busy, but I still remembered why we were just hanging out at home instead of getting things done. Still, I was having a good time. People say that sharing problems makes them easier. Julie might not have thought I was thinking about the past, but she was really supportive in her own way. As the evening got closer, I came up with an idea to show it. Trauma. What, dear? Trauma, your favorite hospital show. There's a new episode tonight. I've seen it twice already, so I can tell you what happens. Wait, I don't know, I really don't like spoiling things. What? Just teasing, she laughed. Sorry, I shouldn't joke like that. It was too easy to trick you. Go on, sweetheart. Tell me what's going to happen tonight. I smiled. She had me for a moment, and I didn't mind lightening the mood a bit. All right. There's going to be a school bus accident, and 4 kids will be taken to the hospital fast. 3 people will have just cuts and broken bones, but the 4th, a little girl, will face serious injuries inside her body. She will need urgent surgery, and later we will see that doctors have to operate again because a small piece of bone they missed before is causing a problem with a vein. Dr. Waters and Dr. Shaw share a close moment in a storage room. Nurse Johnson gets a serious warning from the head nurse of the ward. She must manage her problem with drugs or she will lose her job. And Dr. Dreamy receives a paternity lawsuit, but they keep the sender a secret. For a moment, Julie was quiet as she tried to understand what I had just told her. That's a lot to just be guesswork, she said. I don't mean to sound harsh, but I want to wait and see the show before I say anything. That's totally fine, sweetie. I'm not upset. I get why you would have doubts. Thanks for being open to this and having fun with me. When the show Trauma started, Julie leaned in and watched closely. After 20 minutes, she gave me some odd looks. By the time we hit 40 minutes, she mostly looked lost. When the show ended, she actually seemed a bit frightened. It's true. You've really experienced that before. I can't get how this is happening. You mean you're living the same day again and again? Yes, 3 times now. But I can't remember anything. Is it just you? Or is the whole world stuck in this cycle and only you notice? And why is this happening? I should have been the one asking these questions, but I was too focused on what was happening right then. I really have no idea, my love, but having you with me makes me feel so much better. Well, I'm not sure how much I can help understand the how and why of this. It seems really complicated. But more important than understanding how it works is this. Can we put an end to it? That caught me off guard. Put an end to it? Honestly, I was just hoping it would stop by itself. Maybe when I wake up tomorrow, it will be Saturday. That's what is supposed to happen. This time loop, for lack of a better term, doesn't feel normal. It can't go on forever, can it? We tossed around ideas for a while, but now it was getting close to 11 o'clock, and we were starting to feel tired. We hadn't really done much during the day, but it was still very tiring for my emotions. I had been awake since 5 a.m., trying hard to find proof for what I felt, worried that maybe I couldn't, that maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe we should just go to bed and talk about this in the morning, I said. But I won't remember anything in the morning, babe. We'll have to start all over. Of course. How could I forget that? I wasn't thinking straight. That's it, Julie shouted. What do you mean? Don't go to bed. The day starts over when you sleep, so just stay awake. Could it really be that easy? Just stay up until it was Saturday, July 16th. It seemed simple. You're so smart, Julie. We thought we were really clever. Well, mostly Julie. Looking back, it was silly to get so excited about our idea. We didn't really understand how this time loop worked. After many days of this, I still don't understand it fully. I have some good ideas about it now, but they are just ideas. We had no trouble staying awake until midnight. We were full of energy, and when the clock hit 12, we bounced up and down like excited kangaroos. Gradually, our jumping, dancing, and happy cheers slowed down. We both seemed to understand at the same moment. Is that it? Julie asked, just as I said. How can we tell if it worked? What if it doesn't happen at midnight? What if it happens when I fall asleep? Julie didn't have an answer. As the excitement faded, I suddenly felt very tired. You should go to bed, Julie. I'm going to grab some coffee and see how long I can stay awake. If the time loop has already ended, then I'll just have a boring Saturday. No need to lose sleep over this. That's silly, We're in this together. I just smiled. That's the lovely part of being married, knowing someone is always there for you. I won't tell you every little thing we tried to stay awake. Julie ended up dozing off at the kitchen table a little after 4 a.m. I didn't wake her. I just sat and watched her face, feeling happy to be with her. I can't say for sure, but I don't think I fell asleep. Friday, July 15th, 2016, Day 4. What is love? Please don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. Not anymore. On the third day, things started to follow a regular pattern for the week ahead. I would wake up Julie gently, not by yelling, and explain what was happening. Once I got her to see I was really serious, she would call in to say we couldn't go to work. Honestly, I wouldn't have done that, but that's just how Julie is. Plus, I hardly ever managed to show her we were stuck in a time loop before it was time to get to work. I did improve on that. I began to notice more of what was happening around me. This helped me see what might happen in the days to come. One of the few good things about being stuck in a time loop was having knowledge of the future. Why waste that by being careless? It took a lot of work, a whole lot of work, but I eventually got really good at understanding the situation. Did we team up and solve this together? Not exactly. Mostly, we wondered about what was happening to me. Did some kind of God do this? It didn't seem likely. Neither my wife nor I were very religious. We hadn't been to a church since our wedding day, so we couldn't figure out why any God, if there was one, would care about me. It's simple, really. I am the chosen one. Julie smiled. Chosen one? Really? What are you chosen for? Great things, obviously. Oh, right, how could I forget? But who picked you for this special role, Sam? Someone really wise, very wise. When there's a decision to make, it's Sam's turn. Well, I definitely picked you. Can't argue with your thinking, babe, she chuckled. Another day, another talk. Maybe I'm being a bit grumpy, I said. So, does that make me the spirit of the good times? That's actually not a bad idea, Sam. I know, I was only halfway joking. There are many stories about people stuck in strange moments in time. The usual goal is to teach a lesson. Could those stories come from a shared memory or be made-up tales about things we feel could really happen? Julie seemed to think about this. But what would you actually learn from them? It seems a bit too soon for the Christmas spirit. I've never really been someone who dislikes that time of year, I answered. Is there something special about today? We both thought hard but couldn't come up with anything. So we decided to check online. Look, I said, today is National Tapioca Pudding Day. Maybe you should understand how important pudding is, my friend replied. Sure, we can grab some at the store. I'm up for it, but I'd say we should keep searching just in case. Another day? Another talk? If this isn't from something greater, then maybe there's a scientific reason for it. Where do we even begin to find out? How do we describe what's happening to you? Julie asked. Let's just call it a time loop. Since it's about time, it must be a physics or math issue, I think. I think you're right, dear, she replied. On a college campus somewhere, there might be a really smart person who has spent a lot of time studying time changes. Julie paused for a moment. You know, saying that out loud makes me think there are probably many people who study time, but I'm not sure if any of them can help us. Their research is probably all just ideas. I couldn't help but notice how Julie always called this our problem and talked about what we should do. Although she wasn't trapped in this time loop, she made it clear that she was on my side. It might not have changed much in a practical way, but I truly appreciated it. So, should we look into time loops? Julie asked. Where do we even begin? We could watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show, she giggled. I'm serious, Sam. So am I, Jules. I'm really serious. You wake up every day and face this like it's new. I will tell you what we've discussed so far, and then you dive right into the issue. You still seem excited because everything feels fresh to you. But for me, this is the 12th day of talking about the same thing over and over. I'm feeling worn out. Let's go to a nice restaurant where we can get a table without needing to book ahead. After that, we can watch a movie. Just not Rocky Horror. Then we can come back home, spend some cozy time together, and try again tomorrow. What do you think? I'm not sure, Julie said, hesitating. Are you sure you don't want to? I quickly moved in and picked her up from her chair. It wasn't hard for me since I'm taller and weigh almost 100 pounds more than her. I held her with one arm under her knees and the other behind her back. At first, I just swayed a little back and forth before, "It's just a jump to the left," I sang, matching my actions to the words. Julie let out a happy squeal as we lifted off the ground, and then a step to the Ait! Come on, Jules, sing with me, in stereo. Let's do the time warp again in Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 16. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, no more. Day 16 would change my marriage, though I wouldn't see it right away. The night before, we had enjoyed a nice dinner at an Italian restaurant, followed by a fun movie. She said I owed her for being a bit rough earlier. I didn't mind. Now I could honestly say I had seen it if we went to the movies again, and I thought we would. We fell back into our usual routine. Wake up, show I was stuck in a time loop, and talk about it a lot. Again, we reached the moment when Julie said we should start looking into time problems. I already expected this and had been thinking about it. I didn't want to dampen Julie's spirits, but I just couldn't see any good coming from that direction. Doing serious research in just one day was impossible. I couldn't take good notes. If I found a scientist who could help, I had only one day to contact them. I'd need to show them I was serious and hope they would give me quick answers. I couldn't travel anywhere. I couldn't plan to work with many scientists. I wasn't even sure what questions to ask. If I had more time to study, I could learn a lot and become an expert. But I'm just an ordinary person. How long would it take me to gather so much strange knowledge, especially when I had to count on my memory at every turn? The biggest issue was that I didn't believe this time loop I was caught in could be understood by today's science or math. Just like Arthur C. Clarke once said, any technology that is really advanced seems like magic. There might be a scientific answer, but I wasn't sure I would understand it or that anyone else would either. Something deep inside me felt this was not just science, it felt magical somehow. I wanted to believe there was some kind of smart plan behind the loop because the other option was too scary to think about. Simply put, if this was just science, I was in big trouble. If it was something special or about a higher power, it might not last long. Thinking about that, I realized one night of taking it easy wasn't enough. Julie was still caught up in her last idea. There are many people who study time. I just don't know if any of them will be helpful for us. I bet all their research is, "Hold on a minute, sweetie. Sorry to cut you off. I feel like you are saying the same things you said last night. That's on me. I need to catch you up on everything so we can keep making progress. But we might be getting close to the end of this recap. Soon it will take too long to go over everything and we won't have time to explore new ideas." "What do you want us to do? Just quit?" she asked, a bit upset. No, just listen for a moment. I see that you're eager to jump in and help solve this problem. I understand how you feel. I want things to move forward too, but after more than 2 weeks, I'm starting to feel frustrated with how slow it's been. She looked a bit angry. Before she could respond, I quickly spoke up. "I'm the one to blame for how slow things are. You've been a real support for me. Most of the progress we have made is thanks to you. But now, it seems like we're going in circles. I think that's just how it is sometimes. Let's put the same 2 people in the same situation on the same day, facing the same issue. After 2 weeks, it's tough to find new things to say. I need to come up with a way to change this routine. I also need to relax. Every day feels heavy, like I'm dealing with a sickness and need a break." "All right," she said. "I get that talking about the same thing every day for 2 weeks can be tiring. Do you want to put this off until tomorrow?" "Not tomorrow. You might not remember, but I stopped this talk last night too. We went out and had a good time. Let's do something fun again. But tomorrow, I don't think I'll share my story about the time loop." "What?" she shouted. "You're not going to share? We are in this together, and don't you forget it." "It's just for one day. Since you won't remember this anyway, I'll tell you my plan. I thought about sending you a bunch of flowers at your job tomorrow. It would make the other women a bit envious. I plan to head into New York to get your favorite corned beef sandwich from Katz for lunch as a nice surprise. Then I'll spend the rest of the afternoon planning a special evening for us. What do you think?" I watched her face as I shared my ideas, hoping to see how she felt about my sweet plans. How many husbands get to ask their wives for tips on making them smile? When I finally decided to make my move, I wanted it to feel natural. Great. But her reaction confused me. She seemed happy to hear about flowers at her job, but when I suggested surprising her with lunch, her smile faded a bit. I don't think she even noticed my plans for later. That all sounds nice, Sam, but maybe just the flowers at work. We have the payroll to take care of for all the nurses and support staff. I'll be really busy, so I probably won't have more than 15 minutes to eat whenever I can. If I don't understand what you're dealing with, and I won't, I might say no to lunch. Even if I don't say no, I might not enjoy it like I should. Also, I'll assume you'll be working. You should take a day for yourself. Go into the city and have a good time. Maybe watch a movie and stroll through Central Park. Don't worry about me. When we start again the next day, I'll never really understand what changed. I suppose it all makes sense, even if I thought her reaction was a bit intense. I knew she took her job seriously, so the idea of her saying no to lunch with me didn't upset me too much. But why did it seem to bother her? Could it be that just the idea of turning me away made her so uneasy? Wow, maybe she really cares about me, I thought. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 17. What is love? Baby, please don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. I took my wife's advice. I went into New York and had breakfast at Russ and Daughters. They're well known for their smoked salmon. When it's on a bagel with cream cheese, it's called a classic. It's really good. But for me, the classic is nothing compared to the mensch, which swaps the salmon for smoked sturgeon. I remember the first time I tried it. It was so delicious I had to go home and change. After breakfast, I headed to the Met. I don't really care much for art, so I avoided the modern art area. But I love history, so I enjoyed looking at the medieval and Egyptian displays. I ended up spending most of the day there. That morning, I spent some time online arranging for flowers to be sent to Julie. By noon, I started feeling guilty because she had to work while I was out having fun. I should have suggested taking the day off for both of us. Why didn't I think of that earlier? We could be together every day if we wanted to. I thought I should call her to say I love her and ask if she liked the flowers I sent. I pulled out my phone and found it was turned off. I had turned it off to stop work calls since I didn't call in. Plus, there was no need to stay in touch with anyone when I was stuck in a time loop. Nothing was really urgent. I turned the phone on and saw I had missed a call from Julie. Oh no, I should have guessed she would call after she got the flowers. She left a message just like I thought she would. She thanked me for the nice gift and told me she loved me. I really wish I could have spoken to her. It seemed like we were playing a game of phone tag. I couldn't reach her either. First, I called her work at the hospital, but I only heard the recording saying she was not at her desk. Then I tried her cell phone, but it went right to voicemail. I didn't think much of it. Julie thought she would have a busy day, so it was possible she would be hard to reach. There could be many reasons why her phone was off. She called me back a few hours later while I was sitting in a small park watching people walk by. Hey there. Sorry I missed your call. I've been busy all day. Did you get my message from earlier? The women in the office were really jealous. Susan said she wanted to argue with me for you. I think you can handle her, Jules. You've got much more experience than she does. I'm relying on you to stand up for me. Don't worry. We talked it over. She backed down when I said you would spend a weekend helping her out. I knew it was just a funny idea, but for a moment, I was quiet as I pictured being at Susan's service. For a woman in her 50s, she was still very attractive. I'm not the type to follow someone else's lead, but I do like seeing a woman in leather. You there, babe? Julie asked. Did I make you excited at work? I didn't feel like correcting her about my location. Sorry, hon. I was just browsing for a mask on Amazon. Oh gosh, I should let you get it just so I can see that, she laughed. Anyway, I really wanted to thank you. A girl likes to know she's valued. I'll show you my appreciation tonight. It's a date. I love you, Julie. I love you too, Sam. I never thought to ask why her phone was off during lunch. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 18. What is love? Please don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. I sat up in bed and stretched. My body always felt rested in the morning, no matter what happened the day before. Still, I felt especially calm today after taking a day just for myself. The only way to make things better would have been to have Julie with me. I was supposed to wake her up and figure out this time loop, but I chose to change my plans. I realized that I couldn't solve this problem just by being stubborn. I decided to take things easier and maybe change up my daily routine a bit. Even though I was stuck in a time loop, it didn't mean I had to go through the same day again and again. Well, it did, but you get what I mean. I had spent a lot of time stuck at home, feeling like I was hitting my head against a wall. From this point on, I decided I needed to get out more. If I was stuck in this day, I wanted to enjoy it as much as possible. I also wanted my wife with me if I was going to make the most of my simple life. I had already told her about the time loop I was in, and she understood how serious it was. But could I make her see it in a lighter way? I could see that she needed to focus and figure things out. I had to think about how to talk to Julie. Should I ask her to spend the day with me without bringing up the time loop? It sounded fun to have a relaxed day with her. But could I convince her to skip work? She always took her job very seriously. I checked the clock. Her alarm would go off in less than half an hour. I still wasn't sure what to say to her. I quickly got dressed and left the house before Julie woke up. I thought it best to let her go to work while I took another day for myself. I needed to spend some time thinking about how I could convince Julie to take a day off for something that wasn't a real emergency. With a bit of effort, maybe I could change my usual routine into something much more special. I headed to the mall and strolled around as the shops began to open. A bookstore caught my eye, so I went inside and looked around until I found a book that seemed interesting. After buying it, I went to the food court and sat down with a cinnamon bun and a cup of coffee to read for a bit. If I didn't finish the book today, I could just get it again tomorrow. I lost track of time while reading. By around 11 o'clock, the hard plastic chairs started to feel uncomfortable. I was getting hungry again, but I didn't really want to go home. Even if I wanted to cook, I would still need to clean up afterward and tidy the house like it was a big mess. I had to hide the fact that I had missed work from Julie. Not far from the entrance of our neighborhood, there was a trendy diner. The walls had simple art on display, and the food was small and cost too much. There were comfy seating areas with soft chairs and footrests that were just right for relaxing and enjoying a meal while reading. I found a seat by the window, surrounded by groups of well-off women enjoying their fancy drinks. I had just ordered my food and was about to get back to my book when I looked out the window and saw Julie's Honda Pilot drive by. At first, I was surprised she had time to go home for lunch, especially since she had mentioned how busy this Friday was for her. Then I wondered, why was Dr. Richard Peters drove behind her in his shiny Porsche? Dr. Peters was the leader of the cancer department at St. Gertrude's Hospital. I had seen him at events with my wife. I didn't like him much, not for any one reason, but because he had that look and attitude that some doctors have. He often treated people who weren't wealthy, attractive, or doctors themselves with little respect. As far as I knew, Julie and Dr. Peter didn't have many reasons to be at the hospital. He also had no reason to be having lunch at our house. At that moment, I didn't really think anything strange was going on. It just clashed with everything I believed about my wife. My thoughts were empty, almost frozen. I can't recall leaving the diner or getting into my car. I must have paid my bill because no one chased after me. The drive home feels blurry in my mind. When I got home, I saw Dr. Peters' car parked in my driveway. It was right out in the open where all the chatty neighbors could see it. I stood there in my driveway just looking at the car. Time felt strange. It might have been 30 seconds or maybe even 30 minutes. The phone must have been ringing a lot. "Mabel, look out your window! Sam Watley is back home early. Get some popcorn!" I stepped inside, wishing to find them in the fancy living room, chatting about Medicaid payments. But the room was quiet, with only Julie's purse sitting on a table by the door. As I moved up the stairs, I started to hear a steady bumping sound. Our bed was strong and sturdy. It took a lot of effort to make the headboard shake. I knew for sure what was going on, but I really didn't want to believe it. I kept thinking there had to be a good reason. Maybe they just came to grab a paper Julie forgot and ended up playing a silly game of monkeys jumping on the bed. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I opened the door and saw my world falling apart. It had been 6 years since we promised to love each other, but I had finally caught Julie in a lie. Friday, July 15th, 2016. Day 18. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, no more. I don't know how long I stood in the doorway watching Dr. Peters with my wife. It felt like forever, but it was probably just a few minutes. My first thought was to turn and leave. I'm a big guy and I've never had to fight for anything. The last time I hit someone was in elementary school. So my first thought is to keep things calm. I'm not scared of a fight. I just think it's the right way to act. If it weren't for the time loop, I'd likely have used my phone to record a quick video. Then, I would have walked away to figure out what to do about my unfaithful wife. But why did I need a video anyway? It would be gone by morning. I stared at the plain white walls of our bedroom. For a moment I thought about splattering paint all over them. Images of wild colors filled my mind. I froze, unsure of what to do. I never thought about what I would feel if Julie was unfaithful. The thought seemed unbelievable. I trusted her loyalty even more than my own. I took a small step back, ready to walk away, but then, forget it. I knew that nothing I did would really matter in the long run, but that just meant I could act however I wanted. I walked into the room and took hold of Dr. Peters by the back of his head, pulling him away from my wife. With my left hand, I started hitting him in the side, right where I thought his kidneys might be. Then, two things happened very quickly. Julie yelled out, and Dr. Peters turned in my grip and hit me with his elbow right on my cheek. I heard a loud crack. "Oh no, not this!" Julie shouted. "Sam, please, this can't be real!" While Julie was searching for the right words, Dr. Peters and I were focused on each other. I was holding onto his hair tightly. He couldn't move around much without pulling it out, but I wasn't able to take control. I was swinging my left fist at him, but I felt dizzy from his elbow hitting me. My punches didn't feel strong at all. Peters moved closer, making me lose my balance, then quickly pulled back, hitting me with his elbow again. The first hit hurt my cheekbone, and the second one made it even worse. My face felt like a crushed watermelon. I saw bright lights. Maybe it was all the excitement in me that stopped me from fainting. I let go of Peters and stumbled back. I even got my hands up in what I thought looked like a fighting pose. And then, a man without clothes really hurt me. Dr. Peters was 20 years older than me, 5 inches shorter, and weighed 40 pounds less. But he clearly knew how to fight, which was something I couldn't say about myself. I like to think I could have done better if my face didn't feel like it was full of pain. He threw a lot of punches at my face and body. There were no more punches to my left cheek, either because Peters was being careful or because I had decided to avoid getting hit there again. Even though my cheek was safe, every little move sent sharp pain shooting through my face. My broken cheekbone soon had company, a broken nose. Tears filled my eyes, and I could taste blood. Through my blurry vision, I saw Dr. Peters gather himself and throw a real spin kick. I might have known it was coming, but there was nothing I could do to prevent it. His foot hit my side hard. I felt and heard something crack. Ever since I had pulled Peters away from her, Julie had been yelling. Most of it was just loud noise, but here and there she asked us to stop fighting. I would have liked to make peace, but Peters seemed ready to keep going. Dr. Peters was moving his feet, getting ready to throw another kick, when Julie hugged him tightly from behind. "Stop! Stop! Don't hurt him!" she shouted. Peters got distracted, trying to pull Julie's arms off him. I acted without thinking, and with a bit of luck, I finally managed to land a good punch. I leaned in and hit him right on the jaw. Dr. Peters might have been good at throwing punches, but he couldn't take one. He fell down like a light going out. Peters, Julie, and I all fell down in a pile. I landed on top of Peters, then carefully rolled off. I was really focused on Peters. I half thought he might wake up suddenly and jump at me like a scary movie villain. "Oh my goodness!" shouted my wife. "Your face! Honey, stay still. We need to call an ambulance." She was still using we. I thought we were beyond that. Seeing the woman I loved, still without her clothes, made me feel sick. I didn't want her help. I didn't want to accept it. Then, she ran out of the room. I heard her rushing down the stairs, and I was puzzled. Where was she going? Her clothes were still in the bedroom. I slowly got up and made my way to the stairs. I had to be careful to keep my balance. Each step felt tricky. At last, I reached the front entryway and found out where Julie had gone. Her purse, with her phone inside, was on the table by the door. She was talking on the phone as I walked by her. 555 Heathview Terrace. "My husband needs an ambulance. He got into a fight and has serious injuries on his face. Please hurry." "Sam, where are you going? You need help. You're hurt." She tried to grab me as I rushed out the door. Normally, I wouldn't have been able to push past her, but now the excitement from the fight was fading. Pain and dizziness were hitting me harder every second. Julie tried to keep me close with one arm while holding her phone with the other. I could hear the operator from 911 speaking on the line. "Ma'am, are you there? Are you okay? What is going on?" I pushed my way through the door. Julie stopped trying to use the phone. She threw it down and jumped, wrapping her arms around my leg. "Stop! Wait!" I kept moving, pulling her with me. I knew I wouldn't reach my car like this. Even though she had hurt me a lot, I didn't want to hurt my wife. I put my hand on her forehead and gently pushed her away from my leg. I think I might have been a bit too rough. She cried out and let go. I noticed her getting ready to stand up. It surprised me that we were on the front lawn, and she was still without any clothes. The neighbors would likely never forget this scene. I quickly ran to my car before she could get up. I reached my Taurus just in time and locked the doors. I watched her step back as I started the engine and drove away. She even ran after me for a few steps, waving her arms. I drove out of our neighborhood and onto the busy street. I went about 2 blocks before I had to stop at a red light. Then I heard a scream. I turned and saw a woman in a silver minivan looking at me, her hand over her mouth. Behind her, a little boy was pressing his face against the window, his eyes wide with surprise. "What is happening?" I pulled down my sun visor and checked my reflection in the mirror. Oh no. My eyes were red and looked really bad. My nose was crooked and blood was dripping down, splattering my mouth and shirt, but the worst part was my cheek. It looked like part of my face had sunk in. My left eye seemed to be lower than the other one. You could fit a baseball into the spot where my cheekbone used to be. This really showed why Julie was so worried. It was so surprising that my first thoughts were, "Who is that guy? How is he still awake?" It took me a moment to realize that the face in the mirror was mine. I thought I had felt pain before, but now the hurt was so strong it felt like a giant had hit me with something heavy at just the right moment. I honestly couldn't see. Bright flashes of light jolted through my face, spreading warmth across my cheek and behind my eyes. I knew the light had changed to green because the cars behind me were honking loudly. From my left, I heard a soothing voice. A woman in a minivan had come over and opened my car door. I also noticed a soft sound that I realized was me making a low noise. "It's all right, sir," the woman said. "Help is coming." A police car arrived quickly, soon followed by an ambulance. I was surprised at how fast they got there. I soon found out why. "Mr. Watley, stay still. Your wife called us. You have a serious head injury, so try not to move." I wanted to tell the officer to keep her away from me, but I couldn't say the words because of my hurt face. Fortunately, she hadn't shown up yet, or I might have tried to escape again. The emergency medical team carefully placed a neck brace on me. Then they gently helped me out of the car and secured me onto a stretcher. As I lay there, I saw the sky move in and out of focus. Next, I was inside the ambulance. I felt a small pinch in my arm. What's that? Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 19. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. I sat up suddenly and touched my face. It was fine, of course. The pain had disappeared and my mind felt clear. I should have known the hurt would go away, but it was a nice surprise. I had noticed that the world started fresh every day. Now I saw that I did too. Yet, I remained in bed, rubbing my face without thinking about it for a good 10 minutes. Before long, my thoughts drifted back to my wife. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom watching Julie as she slept. Who was this unfamiliar person in my wife's body? I believed in her loyalty completely, and now I was wrong. I turned and went back to the guest room, putting on my clothes like a robot. How did this happen? Why did it start? How long has it been going on? I needed to know. I wanted to understand why the woman I loved had hurt me so badly. I could have just asked her. If there was one word to describe my wife, it was honest. But when people say someone is just being honest, they often mean that person is being rude. I have to be tough and blunt because I'm just being honest. Julie was really honest. She never said anything that she didn't believe in or thought wasn't true. She always kept her promises and worked hard to do what she said she would do. If a cashier gave her too much money back, she would give it back. If she found something that didn't belong to her, she would try her best to return it. I didn't understand how she could do that and still break her marriage vows, but I could always ask her. I understood that if I asked her clear questions, I would get answers, but that way felt really not very rewarding. I wasn't sure what questions I should ask. Also, while Julie could be truthful, she didn't always share everything. She might say no to some questions. Just staying quiet wouldn't help. After all, if she couldn't deny what she did, but she didn't have to share every detail, and that was what I wanted to know. All the details. Because of the way the time loop worked, I could ask her as many questions as I wanted. I could get better at asking questions by trying different approaches. The more I learned, the better I could get her to share information with me. But that didn't interest me. I felt hurt and vulnerable. I didn't want to see her or even talk to her. The idea of sitting down with my wife day after day to dig into the details of her betrayal made me feel sick. I wanted to discover for myself what Julie had been doing when I wasn't watching. When I finally decided to talk to her, I wanted to be ready. I wanted to know if she was hiding anything from me. I hoped for clear and honest answers, which I usually got from Julie. But what could she keep from me if I only relied on her to share and my own simple questions? But how could I find out? I couldn't use fancy technology to listen in on her phone calls or place cameras around our house. That wouldn't work. I would only get a short amount of proof. Unless she decided to call a friend and share her troubles, I was stuck. I already believed that she was seeing Dr. Peters, or Dr. Dick as I was starting to call him. What else could I find out? Then I had an idea. Listening in on their conversations could let me know what Julie and Dr. Dick were talking about. That could be helpful. I could also confront Julie with what I knew about her secret and then leave. If I could listen in on her phone, I might catch some talks with her family or friends that could give me clues. I could try that. But only having one day to watch my wife made spying not very helpful. Also, hiring a private detective would be a poor choice. What could they find out in less than a day, even if I could get one of them to stop everything and start right away? Eureka! I recalled reading that most detective work now relied on technology. Detectives no longer walked the streets, knocking on doors and exploring dark paths. Most of what they needed to solve a case was available online. They looked through databases, checked phone records, and searched social media accounts. I might not have time for a traditional stakeout on my wife, but I could follow her online activities. One thing I was certain of was that Julie had not hidden her affair very well. She shared everything with her best friend and her sister. She also told her mother a lot. For a moment, anger took over me when I thought about it, but I knew I was right. She always said that she had no secrets from Emma or Liz. One time I asked her, "What about secrets from me?" She just smiled and said, "A girl has to keep some mystery." I realized I needed to look at her laptop or phone. The phone would be best because I could see her texts and emails, but today was not the day. By the time I came up with a plan, Julie was already at work. I drove to the same diner I went to yesterday. I promised myself that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, I would begin looking for answers. Friday, July 15th, 2016, Day 20. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, no more. I quietly tiptoed into the bedroom and picked up Julie's phone from the nightstand. I checked to see if it could unlock with a fingerprint. No luck. That would have been the easiest way. I could have just used her finger while she slept. I went downstairs and picked up the bag where she kept her laptop before I stepped outside. I left my phone instead of my wife's. They looked the same. I thought it would take her a bit to notice. She might sleep longer without her alarm. Then her passcode wouldn't unlock her phone. After a while, she would probably realize it was my phone, maybe when she noticed her laptop was missing. I hopped on the train to New York. My plan was to ride the subway around the city all day. I thought Julie would just go to work. Maybe she would try to call her phone, but I wouldn't pick up. If she logged on at her job and used GPS to find her phone, it would show up far away and always changing locations. I had to figure out my wife's PIN number to unlock the phone. I started with birthdays. First, I tried hers, then mine, and my parents' birthdays. Oh no, I didn't know her best friend Liz's birthday or the birthdays of the rest of her family. They were saved in my calendar, on my phone. Tomorrow, I decided not to bother with switching phones. I understood that it was a waste of time. I had done it to keep Julie from contacting our phone company and saying her phone was missing. Even without my phone in the same spot, I was certain she would guess who took it. Would she tell anyone if she thought her husband had it? I guessed no. She would wait to talk to me when I got home. I hoped she was feeling nervous about me looking at her information. Well, there would be no more celebrations until tomorrow. For now, I began trying easy number patterns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the corners, an X across the number pad. Soon I faced a bigger issue. After 7 wrong tries, the phone locked me out for 5 minutes. Each time I failed, the lockout time became longer. After I tried 9 times, I decided to grab something to eat since I had an hour to wait before I could try again. Finally, after my 10th try, the phone stopped working for good. It sent me to the company website to fix it. I realized I wouldn't be able to meet the security rules needed to reactivate it. So I threw the phone in a trash can at the subway station. I'd deal with it tomorrow. Now I focused on my laptop. I turned it on. First, I ran my finger across the fingerprint scanner to check if she had that feature on. It didn't respond at all, not even with a message saying, "Fingerprint not found." So that option was gone. Next, I figured it must be protected by a password. The good news was that I could guess as many times as I wanted without getting locked out. I tried our names, names of friends and family, favorite movies, and even her car. I thought hard about anything that might be important to Julie and typed it in, but nothing worked. I spent the entire day guessing passwords, then decided to stop and booked a hotel room for the night. Tomorrow would be a new day. For the next couple of weeks, I tried to get into Julie's phone. After 5 days, I stopped trying with the laptop. I could still get the emails from her phone, and using a full keyboard made it easier to guess her passwords. I tried calling our phone company and pretending to be Julie to unlock her phone, but they didn't believe me. Even when I spoke in a high voice, it didn't make a difference. Go figure. With only 10 tries allowed each day, I had a lot of time on my hands, so I decided to focus on enjoying each day. Step 1 of that plan was to get some money. I planned to cross off everything I had ever thought about doing from my bucket list. Many things I could easily go and do. I wanted to visit all the museums, theme parks, fairs, and sites within a day's drive of Trenton, New Jersey. I wanted to try skydiving, jump off a base, play in a bounce house, and even ride an ostrich. But many items on my personal list needed a lot of money. You might think that money would not be a problem for me. I worked on Wall Street and made a good salary, over $100,000 a year. I was in so much debt it felt overwhelming. Before I discovered that my wife was not loyal, I would have said that her biggest problem was that she was used to getting what she wanted. She loved her nice things and didn't like hearing no. Her parents had a comfortable life, but they weren't wealthy. However, Julie wanted even more for herself. 6 years after we graduated, we both still had student loans to pay off. Because of the delays we had, it would likely take at least 6 more months to pay everything off. I had a closet packed with fancy suits, which I thought were important for my job in finance. But Julie's clothing costs were much higher than mine. You could buy all my clothes for what she spent just on shoes. She even had a whole line of Jimmy Choo shoes. And the purses? Wow. Coach, Prada, Gucci, Louis Vuitton. Then there was our home. We earned a good income, but the fancy neighborhood we lived in was really too expensive for us. The one thing I stood firm on was our cars. I was okay with my old Taurus. I only used it to get to the transit station anyway, but Julie wanted a nicer vehicle. We had a few loud arguments about what we wanted compared to what we could really pay for. In the end, she agreed to just get a Honda. Of course, she chose a Pilot, the priciest car Honda makes, with all the features available. So, money was tight. I didn't have much. Every day after I tried 10 times to unlock Julie's phone, I did something I hadn't planned on. I went to work. Don't get me wrong, I hadn't forgotten that my wife was unfaithful, but I needed something to take my mind off things. The first few nights, after I had either been locked out of Julie's devices or had just let go, I did something I had never done before. I drank too much until I lost control. I'm not someone who usually drinks. I believe many people start drinking when they're young to feel accepted and cool. In college, drinking often feels mandatory for having a good time. By the time we grow up, it seems like you need to drink to enjoy yourself. I hadn't started young. My parents only drank beer once in a while. I had never seen them have more than 2 at a time. They allowed me to satisfy my curiosity with a few small sips over the years. I have to be honest, beer does not taste good. I really doubt that many people loved their first sip. It's something you get used to over time. I never got used to it. But now, I was looking for a way to forget my painful life. Nothing makes you forget your worries like strong drinks. I discovered a new enjoyment in drinking. I bought a few bottles of strong drinks and went back to my hotel for the night. I would drink until I couldn't think straight, then wake up the next morning. One good thing about being stuck in a time loop? There were no hangovers. But there was a surprising problem with this plan that stopped my drinking spree. I must have drunk too quickly and then blacked out. I meant to do something else, but I didn't expect to wake up still on Friday. I had my first dream in a month. I'm sitting on the couch in our living room. My mom and Nancy Reagan are chatting in the armchairs beside me. Of course. You can have my meatloaf recipe, Nancy. The secret is using crushed potato chips instead of breadcrumbs, my mom says. But won't they get soft, Rhonda? Mrs. Reagan asks. Yes, they won't add that much crunch, but they really give it a great taste, my mom replies with a smile. I'm telling you, Ron will really like it. I hope so. He seems so distant lately. He's taken a part-time job as a greeter at Walmart. I think it's a bit disappointing for someone who used to lead the country. I'm worried he might be feeling down. Well, my mom asks, have you thought about showing him some affection? Of course. That was the first thing I tried. I even made it extra special. Let me tell you about something that Sam's dad really enjoys. It's called a Tijuana slider. My mom is interrupted by a loud thumping sound coming from upstairs. Those kids, says Rhonda, sounding really annoyed. They're up there jumping on the bed again. Sam, can you go up and tell them to calm down? Okay, Mom, I answer. I stand up and head to the stairs. It's tough to walk up because I notice my pants are down around my ankles. I begin to bend down to pull them up. No, no, Samuel, Nancy calls out. Just leave them. What is love? Please don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. No more drinking. I promised myself I would stop drinking so much. But if I wasn't going to drink to forget my problems, I needed another way to cope. That's when I began my plan to get rich quickly. I still spent my morning ride entering PIN codes into Julie's phone. But once I got to New York, I actually went to my job. I thought about taking the money. I didn't even think about the chance of getting caught. I could see the private account details of the people in my mutual funds. I could take enough money to last me the day before anyone noticed. And if I got caught, I might just spend a few hours in jail. But that's not who I am. I also had a way to make good money honestly. Day trading. I didn't trade for customers at Broadwell and Marks. My work was all about analyzing data. I had all the tools I needed to study the market and trade for my own investment account. My stock portfolio wasn't very big, only about $20,000. I would have preferred to use that money to pay off some of my debts, but for someone working on Wall Street, not having any money invested is frowned upon. It's like a meat shop for vegetarians. Even though we are told to keep our money matters private, the bosses often look at our financial information. I sometimes thought that my choice not to invest my own money might be stopping me from moving up at Broadwell and Marks. Sometimes, Dwayne Maxwell, one of the vice presidents, looked at me like I was scared or cowardly. The other comments were less direct, but during my performance reviews twice a year, I often heard suggestions that I should take more risks with my investments if I wanted to stand out. You might wonder, why work on Wall Street if you don't believe in your own choices to invest? I do believe in my choices. If I research a company well, I feel good about making an investment. But I also don't want to spend all my free time working. I can't invest in the companies and products that I find for our mutual funds. They call that insider trading. Our investment group has a lot of money thanks to many people who invest with us. So when we buy a stock, the price can change. Each time a stock is bought or sold, the price shifts. For example, our B&M Small Capital Growth Fund can buy several 100,000 shares of a company in one go. If you knew ahead of time about such a deal, that's why I wasn't allowed to trade in stocks I looked into for the firm. All the time I spent doing analysis didn't help me grow personally. I would need to do more research on my own time, or I could do what many of my coworkers did. Be dishonest. While I couldn't use my own insider knowledge to trade, I might be able to trade based on what someone else knew. For example, a friend in another department might know about a big deal coming up with his fund. He could tell me this information, and then I could use it to make a quick profit. Then I help out later on. It's just as wrong, but it's harder to show it's happening. This is partly how some people on Wall Street make a lot of money. They are careful to avoid leaving any evidence behind. There are no emails or written notes. They only talk in person or use secret phones. Not everyone does this, but many take shortcuts at times. Even getting caught isn't the end of the world. You might pay some fines or spend a little time in jail. If you make a lot of money for yourself and your investors, Wall Street will quickly forget any mistakes. I knew that my choice not to join the crowd had slowed my career down. My chance to meet people and build relationships in finance was limited because I didn't play along. Honestly, I might have given in to the push to do better. On my own, I might have crossed the line and ignored the rules. But Julie was my wife. She stood for honesty and doing what was right. I didn't want to let her down. Now I didn't care what she thought. I would have eagerly chosen a life of breaking the law as long as I stayed stuck in this endless loop. But I didn't have to. I wanted to earn money the right way, so that's what I chose to do. The stock market started at 9:30 in the morning and ended at 4:30 in the afternoon. I spent many days observing the market closely. I noted every little change that could help me earn money if I knew about it ahead of time, which was almost everything. The real challenge wasn't finding ways to earn. The challenge was picking a few options that I could remember easily. My notes would vanish with the morning light. I had to plan my trades ahead of time. This way, I could go to work in the morning and see my bank accounts grow throughout the day. I bought futures, sold stocks I didn't own, and used borrowed money to buy more stocks. I began trading on the second day. After a week, I was making about $300,000 by the end of the day. After 2 weeks, it was $1.2 million. I kept making small changes to my strategy. I was only held back by my own memory and how well I could remember things. Both of these got better while I spent time in the loop. Soon, I was growing my $20,000 into over $7 million. It could have been more, but I would have needed to keep all the money in until the market closed at 4:30. Instead, I arranged it so that money would start moving into my checking account at 10 a.m. It would slowly build up until I had the whole amount ready to spend easily. Now, I had the money to do what I wanted. Just when I hit my first million, I figured out how to get into Julie's phone. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 44. What is love? Please don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. I was on my daily trip, going through the steps of trying to get into Julie's phone. I was more focused on improving my stock trades than on the phone. Her passcode was our wedding date. It made me feel a little unsure. I chose to wait for a while. I went to work and placed my orders for the day. After that, I found a calm place in the New York Public Library to look at the phone without any distractions. As I thought, there were a lot of messages and emails waiting for me. I spent the rest of the day reading through their messages. The texts were from the last 8 months, starting when we both got new phones. The emails went back a year. We had free email accounts with limited space, so sometimes we had to delete old messages. The bad news was that the secret relationship with Peters had been happening for several months. I had a feeling what I saw wasn't the first time, and the texts proved it. I saw that they had arranged their Friday meeting days ahead of time. Julie must have reached out to him to cancel on the days we talked about the time loop. This made sense for why she seemed so nervous when I mentioned bringing her lunch. I started to think she might be worried that my time loop would happen on a day she had plans to be with someone else. She was probably hoping the loop would end before she got found out. Plus, I realized that Liz and Emma knew about Julie being unfaithful to me. Dick's behavior was just plain silly. The way he flirted and joked was something you'd expect from teenagers, not grown-up professionals. Their conversations were all about 2 things: what they planned to do together and, in Dr. Dick's case, how to keep his wife from knowing. Julie never said anything about me finding out about her secret life. But her texts showed worse things. At first, she only told her 2 best friends about her hidden life, but some of her comments showed that more people were aware of it. For example, Liz asked, "Did Susan, Julie's boss, say anything about you taking a 2-hour lunch yesterday? Julie replied, "No, she knows I always make up the time I miss." She laughs and says that being happy helps me work better, haha. Emma tells me, "Mom is planning a 5K cancer walk with her church friends. She wants you to ask Dr. Peters if he'll say a few words before it starts." Why doesn't she just ask him herself? I'll help her talk to him. Why do you think, silly? She's not in a close relationship with him, LOL. I felt really angry. Both her mom and her boss knew about it. If her boss knew, then a lot of people at the hospital probably knew too. I didn't find any messages that clearly stated anyone else knew, but there were small hints that she wasn't careful about what she was doing. Trenton was a large city, so she didn't have to stress about small-town rumors. Still, she didn't appear worried that our friends or family would say anything. To me, that meant they were aware and went along with it. But the most shocking thing from the messages and emails wasn't just her bold actions with Dr. Dick. No, the worst part was that the messages showed Peters was not important. Julie's relationship with Peters had only started a few months ago, but Julie had been unfaithful long before that. There was another doctor before Peters, a pediatrician, and before the pediatrician, she had an affair with a neighbor who lived just a couple of streets away from us. I didn't know anything about who came before the neighbor. The emails dated back a year, and she had been unfaithful to me the whole time. I looked at the phone in my hand for a moment. I threw the phone against the wall of my hotel room. I wanted to see it break into a beautiful mess of plastic and glass. Instead, it just bounced off. I walked over and picked it up. The screen now had a tiny crack. Great. I spent around 30 seconds trying to get the protective cover off. Then I threw it again with all my strength at the other wall. It made a dent in the wall, and the battery fell out, but it still looked mostly okay. "Why won't you just break?" I shouted as I started jumping up and down on the phone. "You're worthless. You're just a big mistake." Someone started banging on the wall. "Hey, be quiet in there. People are trying to get some sleep." "Leave me alone," I shouted back. But I did stop yelling. It was late, so I turned off the lights and lay on top of the bedspread, still in my clothes. Before reading her messages, I had still held on to a small bit of hope for my marriage. If her relationship with Dr. Dick was just a recent mistake and Julie really felt sorry, I might have thought about letting her off the hook, or at least putting the problem aside until the time loop was over. Truthfully, everything in my life outside of work was all about her. I could have pushed aside my pride if it meant getting my caring wife back, but did I ever really have her? How could she have hurt me for so long without caring about my feelings, my love, or my good name? Just how long had this been happening? In the first emails where she talked about her close friends, it felt like a common topic. I was curious and thought there was more to discover. Julie and her sister often mentioned their diaries. They would say things like something needed to be added to the diary, or they were writing in them while they texted each other. I had no clue that Julie kept a diary. If I had still trusted her, it wouldn't have bothered me. Diaries are very private by nature. If I had known she had a diary, I would have really wanted to see it. It's just how people are. But where was it? If it was on her computer, I didn't want to go back to trying to break into her laptop. I could do it, but I figured she probably had a real diary. Julie always took pride in her handwriting. She found any reason to send a handwritten note or card. I was sure that if she kept a diary, it would be made of real paper and ink. Tomorrow, I would go find it. For the first time since I was a young boy, I cried myself to sleep. Friday, July 15th, 2016. Day 45. What is love? Please don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. In the morning, I used the time before Julie's alarm rang to look in some odd places around the house. Our big house was way too large for just 2 people. Julie said we would need all the space when we had kids. I believed we would be happier in a smaller house with less money to owe. You can imagine who got their way in that talk. I looked all around the kitchen, checking every cupboard and pantry. I even peeked behind the trash can and opened the oven before calling myself silly and moving on. I searched through all the closets downstairs and opened every drawer in the furniture. I didn't think I would find Julie's diary in the common areas of the house, but I had time to look around carefully. I went out to let Julie get ready for work. I could have gone to grab some breakfast, but instead I just parked a block away. I hadn't felt like eating much since I saw my wife with Dr. Dick. Sometimes I could go for days without food, and my body seemed to recover each morning. Once I was sure she had left, I drove back home. I knew I had to follow the same plan at noon. I decided I should look in the bedroom before any strange smells came up. We had a shared office and 2 extra bedrooms, but the main bedroom felt like the best place to search for a diary. I hoped to find it and leave before Julie came back with Dr. Dick around lunchtime. I wondered where women keep things. I figured my best chance was to check her walk-in closet. I called it her walk-in closet because there was no space for my clothes there at all. Our master bedroom didn't have enough space for 2 big closets, so Julie bought an old wooden cabinet for my clothes. I looked in all the boxes on the top shelves, moved some clothes around to see what was behind them, and took the shoes out of their spots. I found nothing. On her bedside table, I discovered a couple of things I didn't know she owned, along with a few I was already aware of, so it wasn't a big surprise. But there was no diary. Next, I focused on her makeup table. It was part of a matching set with my wardrobe. Sometimes I felt a bit bitter, thinking that if she hadn't discovered that set and liked the vanity so much, my clothes might be somewhere else. It was a huge piece of Victorian furniture. I looked through all the drawers and found nothing. Just as I was about to stand up and look in another place, an idea crossed my mind. Good antique furniture often has secret spaces. Julie had bought the furniture from a dealer. I came home one day and there it was. I wasn't thrilled about spending more money, but my suits were getting squished by Julie's growing collection of clothes. So I decided not to make her send everything back, but only if the big cabinet was mine. I believe Julie's plan was to fill both the closet and the cabinet eventually. Since Julie was the only one who talked to the buyer, I had no clue if this dresser had any secret spaces. Julie hadn't said a word about it. This fancy piece of furniture was very costly over 200 years ago. Back then, rich people loved to have hidden places in their furniture. Funny enough, this piece was cheaper than similar ones today because someone had fixed it up in the last 50 years. Isn't that wild? I went back to my search. This time, instead of just checking the drawers, I took them all the way out. I carefully examined every part of the wooden surface, using my fingers to touch and explore every little gap. I discovered 9 hidden spaces. Some were too tiny for anything except a coin or a folded note. Others were big enough to fit a book. It was clear that Julie was aware of these secret places. When I held 2 drawers next to each other, I noticed that one was thinner than the other. Pressing on the back left corner uncovered a hidden layer that held Julie's diploma from Rutgers. She must have a copy at work. I reached up into the empty center drawer and touched a lever. I played with it until it moved forward, and another hidden drawer dropped down. Inside were some of Julie's nicer pieces of jewelry, including a brooch that used to belong to her great-grandmother. Altogether, there were 7 hidden compartments full of Julie's things. I felt a little pleased, thinking she hadn't discovered the other 2. But there was still no diary. I searched the vanity again, looking closely. I found a small empty space inside, but no diary there either. I leaned back with a sigh. My gaze wandered to the big cabinet. A complete set. That's where it was. Under a hidden floorboard, I found Julie's diary and some important papers like her birth certificate and social security card. The diary looked very nice, made of leather with the year printed on the spine. I opened it and saw Julie's beautiful handwriting covering almost half of the pages. Just as I was about to begin reading, I hesitated. This diary would surely help me understand how Julie felt, but it only covered the last 6 months. Where were the diaries for 2015 and before? She had to keep them somewhere. The small space under my suits was not big enough for them. If they were all the same size, they would take up a big box. Hiding that many notebooks would be tough. We gathered a lot of things, like many married couples do, but we also had a big house that was too big for just us. We didn't have a basement or an attic filled with stuff where she could hide a box of diaries without anyone noticing. I was the one, the husband, who was always asked to go to the basement or attic to find things. If those items were there, I would have already seen them. I had a sudden thought. It had to be her parents' house. They kept Julie and Emma's old rooms just as they were, in case one of their daughters came to visit. My wife's old room would be a great spot for her to keep her old diaries. It was almost noon now. I looked around at the messy bedroom I had created. The drawers of the dresser were open, and their things were all over the floor. I thought about cleaning it up before Julie and Dr. Dick got here, but why should I bother? I left everything messy. I left Julie's diary on the bed, opened to today's date. I grabbed a marker and wrote the word rude on the empty page. That should surprise her. I drove to the Bradleys' house. Julie's dad, John, worked as a vice president for one of the electric companies in New Jersey. He would be at work. Her mother, Mary, would probably be at church. I'm not sure why. She was one of those older women who seemed to go to church every day, and she made sure everyone knew about it. What do you do at church on a Friday afternoon? Maybe just chat with the other ladies, I suppose. I had seen the messages she sent to my wife, and that woman who acted like she loved God hadn't told her daughter anything about being loyal in a marriage or how special it is. So neither of the Bradleys was home. If they had a spare key, I didn't know where it was. Looking through their yard in the daytime didn't seem like a good idea. I didn't remember them having an alarm in the times I had visited. There were cloudy glass panels next to the door. I grabbed a decorative ceramic frog from the yard and threw it through the glass near the door handle. After that, it was easy to reach in and unlock the door. The doorway was set back and partly hidden by bushes. Still, I thought someone might have seen me, so I had to hurry. I didn't want to waste the whole day in jail when I could be starting on the diaries. I headed straight for Julie's old bedroom. I ignored everything that was out in the open. I had been to Julie's room before, so I knew she wouldn't have left her things out in the open. At the end of her bed, there was a pink trunk covered by a nice blanket. I had a feeling what was inside. I lifted the blanket away. The trunk was locked with a tiny heart-shaped padlock, the kind that parents buy for young girls to keep their secrets safe. I wasn't sure if the key was in the room or if Julie took it with her. But at this point, being careful was not an option. I took a trophy from a shelf, girls' volleyball division runner-up, and began hitting the lock with the fake marble base. The old trunk was not very good quality. After 2 hits, the lock broke open and I could see what was inside. There were Julie's diaries. The first ones were not all the same. Julie likely bought the leather-bound set back in 2008 because that's when they all looked alike. She had thought ahead. There were many diaries that went up to the year 2028. I didn't care about Julie's childhood troubles. We met in March 2009, so I took the diaries starting from that year and quickly left before any police arrived. I won't explain every detail of the 7 years of Julie's thoughts and feelings. Instead, I'll share the main points I picked up after several days of reading. It took me some time to get through them. It was hard to read. When did Julie start being unfaithful to me? It would take less time to count the days she was loyal. She was true to me for 2 months while we were dating and for 6 months after we got married, and that's all. That's really all. For 7 years, Julie had been unfaithful to me almost all the time. This helped me understand why I never saw any change in her behavior or how she treated me. I might not have seen anything if she hadn't stopped playing games. At first, she felt terrible about being unfaithful to me. Her diary was full of regret and self-blame for the first 2 years. But as time went on, she wrote less and less about her doubts, especially when it became clear she wasn't going to be found out. After 3 years, she stopped worrying about being caught. After 5 years, she stopped mentioning any feelings of guilt. Over the past few years, she talked about her relationships in a casual way, like it was nothing serious, just like going to the spa. I really didn't know my wife at all. The diary also showed that nearly all of our friends and family were aware that Julie was being unfaithful. Julie wrote about many of her daily talks, especially the ones about her marriage or other connections. Sometimes she just mentioned that she thought someone figured it out. The only people she didn't talk about were my parents. That's the hardest part. The hardest part was that the diary said why she was unfaithful. She said I wasn't good enough. I couldn't make her happy. I can't just ignore that. It shows a side of me that feels unfair. First, I had a problem with the computer, not with me. Wait, that sounds wrong. So, let me be clear. I'm not lacking anything or unable to perform. I'm not dealing with a small problem here. I have everything I need to make things work. But when I met Julie, I didn't have much experience. It actually took me a long time to feel comfortable in an intimate setting. In college, I didn't have the usual view on relationships. I may not fit in with some of the other things about me, but I believe in love. I have always respected the women around me. I don't look at them in a way that feels wrong. I don't talk in a flirty way. Unless I'm in a relationship with someone. More importantly, I never tried hard to get close to girls. The quickest I ever got to know a woman well was after 6 dates. And that was with my future wife. College is all about casual dating, but I didn't join in. Any girl who wanted to get serious with me too fast was someone I wasn't interested in. By what my friends thought, I was quite conservative. The girls I went out with were pretty much the same, also quite reserved. My high school girlfriend and I never got intimate. I first became close with someone during my second semester in college. I had been dating a girl named Anne for 5 months. She had some experience, but not too much. Our time together felt a bit strange and quick. We acted more like teenagers than college students. My next 2 girlfriends were similar. Then there was Julie. Julie was the first girl I dated who had what you could call a normal dating history. We didn't share the details of our past relationships, but it was obvious that Julie had more experience than I did. To be honest, I felt a little shy around her, but we got along really well as a couple. My issue was that I was trying to keep up with someone much more experienced, while I still felt like I was just starting out. I felt like a clumsy teenager. I finished too quickly. I was too rough. Everything I did felt awkward. I was too proud to say, "Hey, I know I'm not the best at this. Can you help me improve?" What young man wants to admit he's not making his girlfriend happy? Julie also didn't have the courage to bring it up. Her diary showed that she was worried I might end our relationship if she said the wrong thing. She didn't want to upset me or make me feel bad. Looking back, she might have been correct. Asking a man about his ability in a romantic way can really hurt his pride. This can happen at any age, but an older man may handle it better and think about it more calmly. At 21, I might have been too embarrassed and ended things with her. I really can't say for sure. Perhaps Julie could offer some kind advice. I wasn't bad at being a loving partner, I just needed more practice. The issue was that we both acted like everything was fine. Julie worried that if she said anything about our intimacy, it would bring up the big issue we were both avoiding. So she stayed quiet and left it up to me to figure things out. Since most of my worries came from the physical side of being intimate, I focused on connecting with her in a softer way. I worked on being affectionate and creating a warm, loving atmosphere. I'm a clever guy. The touching didn't go on for long. I noticed Julie's signals, and after a while I could make her very happy with my hands and mouth. That was all I really knew how to do for some time. On our first wedding anniversary, we spent a long time in bed. Julie was sleeping beside me, looking very pleased. I was lying awake, feeling uneasy. After over 2 hours in bed, I had enjoyed myself 3 times while Julie had done so 5 or 6, but only about 10 minutes of that was really serious. Julie had once shown me a lot of affection, and we had a close moment together. In a short time, we were very involved with each other. It almost felt like we were like a couple who shared a special bond. After that experience, I really wanted to improve how I connected with her. I didn't want to just rely on quick fixes. I wanted to be better overall. I started looking into tips and advice about being a good partner. While I didn't have a major problem, I knew I needed to work on my timing, so I read different books and articles, focusing on ways to help. I also started doing breathing exercises to help me stay calm and focused. I worked on improving my skills over time. I spent long hours trying to understand what I could do to be better. I watched videos to gather ideas that I could share with my wife. I wanted to learn more, not just for myself, but to connect with her. I also read many articles to gain a better understanding of relationships. It took a while. It probably took a couple of years before I felt sure that I had learned enough to make my wife happy. I can't hold Julie responsible for not teaching me about these things. I never asked her for help either. We were both young and inexperienced, but I hold her responsible for how she dealt with our situation. She was aware of my flaws when she said yes to marrying me. If our intimate life was a deal breaker for her, she shouldn't have agreed to be with me. She had choices. She could have ended our relationship. She could have tried to help me improve, or she could have accepted me as I was. Sadly, she chose a different path. She loved me and wanted to marry me, but she also wanted a more satisfying relationship. So she looked for it elsewhere. She started making those choices soon after we began dating. On our first date, she could see a future for us. After going out a few more times when we became closer, she was already in love. But the time we spent together was not as good as I hoped. There was one thing in her diary that I didn't agree with, and that was Julie's view on cheating. She believed that until a couple agrees to be exclusive, they can see other people. I totally disagreed. To me, a good person should either date one person at a time or tell their partners if they are dating others. I thought only selfish people used "we never talked about being exclusive" to justify acting badly. But a common feeling among young people is that they don't want to take responsibility for their actions. I was surprised to learn that Julie thought this way. She always seemed so honest and dependable, so I never expected it. As she went along with my slow approach to our relationship, she still spent time with a few friends in her dorm. It was only after a few dates with me that she saw I was serious about us. She stopped seeing the other guys when our relationship became more serious. She might not have thought what she did before that was cheating, but I definitely did. If I had known how easygoing she was about being loyal, I would have ended things right there. But according to Julie, she only started being unfaithful 2 months after we first got close. Julie thought I had never been with anyone before. I guess I really gave that impression. She never mentioned it because she thought it might make me feel shy. She also didn't want to share how many guys she had been with, even if we did talk about it. It wasn't that the number was very big. She just knew I had old-fashioned ideas, and she worried that I might not take it well. Since we both avoided the topic, Julie decided to handle it herself. She understood that my issue was just a lack of experience. She didn't realize that it took me longer to understand things like this. After 2 months, she got tired of waiting. She started seeing other people again. At first, she didn't feel bad about it. I was just a new boyfriend she liked a lot. She thought that either I would improve or our relationship would come to an end, but she didn't want to miss out on having a fulfilling life. As time passed, things became more serious between us, and she started to feel more guilty. If Julie hadn't been finding her happiness elsewhere, she might have felt more encouraged to talk to me about the problems we were facing. The longer we stayed together, the harder it became to ignore the issue. If she had brought it up sooner, it would have been difficult to hear. But saying I was not a good partner became much harder for her the longer she stayed quiet. She made excuses for her unfaithfulness until we got married. By then, her diary was full of sweet notes about love and plans for our future. She promised there would be no other men in her life after the wedding. We got married right after we finished college and started our life together. I was getting better, but Julie was still upset. She held out for 6 months before a male nurse, whom she had dated in college, drew her in. She felt very ashamed. Cheating on her husband did not match with how she saw herself as a trustworthy person. But what happened between them felt amazing. She kept thinking about it. A few weeks later, she met up with him again. Then a few weeks after that, she was filled with guilt, but she didn't stop. After each visit, she would write in her diary that it would be the last time. Then she would feel sorry for herself when she slipped up again. Eventually, she gave up trying to change things. She still claimed she would quit, but only if her marriage got better, so she wouldn't want it anymore. Yet, she didn't do anything to make things better between them. She kept quiet. She never admitted she was unhappy. I knew I had to improve. But Julie never said a word about it, and honestly, I was fine with how things were. There was no hurry for me to do better. As I mentioned earlier, it took me a whole year after we got married to truly focus on improving myself. It wasn't because Julie pressured me. It was something I wanted to do for myself. By that time, Julie had accepted that she had strayed from our marriage. She seemed to doubt herself less and less. Deep down, she realized she was managing to hide her actions. Sometimes, she would even say that she noticed I was changing for the better. At first, she said it gave her hope that she could move on from the other men in her life. Then she started talking about maybe trying to see them less. In the end, she never even talked about giving up her casual partners. By the time I met her conditions for being loyal to me, it seemed like she had forgotten her wandering ways were only meant to be for a little while. She had enjoyed her freedom for so long that she felt no need to change. Over the years, she was found out a few times by coworkers and friends. Each time, they kept her secret, either because they didn't mind or didn't want to get involved. They quietly agreed. Julie became confident. She began telling her friends about her relationships, not me, of course. The times she felt a little guilty were on special days like our anniversary or my birthday. And oddly enough, Sometimes after we had a warm moment together, when I discovered she was unfaithful, Julie's diary only had good things to say about how I treated her. The boy had turned into a man. She thought I was better than almost all the people she had been with. But she didn't stop there. She didn't even think about it. Not once in over 3 years had she written about wanting to end things. Along with the usual daily details and her secret life, Julie's diary was filled with words about one other thing: how deeply she cared for me. Of all the reasons she shared for loving me, I noticed one important reason was left out. She loved me because I was too trusting, someone who cared for her so much that I didn't see her true self. She never said it out loud, but deep down she must have seen me like that. No, what she really thought of me, at least what she would confess, was full of happiness and magic. You would think I was a perfect prince if you only read the nice parts of her diary. I think of myself as a bit of a romantic, but even I struggled to listen to her overly sweet talks about Samuel Watley without feeling sick. Maybe I felt that way because her words seemed so out of touch with reality. She hurt me, took away my pride, and made me lose respect in front of my friends. Yet she still says she loves me completely. I always thought I was lucky to have Julie. She matched me in so many ways. It felt like we both loved each other equally. She was nearly the ideal wife. She had some faults, but nothing I couldn't accept. Then this happened. How could someone so good have another side that was so bad? I just couldn't understand it. What I did know was that my marriage was finished. At least it felt that way. If I could ever get out of this strange situation. My choices were very few. I couldn't divorce her. I couldn't leave her. I really couldn't find a way to make her feel the hurt I felt inside. Every morning, Julie woke up believing she still had a caring husband who was completely unaware of what was really happening. This didn't mean I wouldn't try to get back at her, even if it was just a little bit. I made some decisions. 1. I would find ways to get back at Julie, even if I didn't want to hurt her. I don't believe in hitting women, so there were still plenty of options left. 2. I would challenge Dr. Dick again. I needed to get ready for that so I wouldn't lose again. 3. I would think of ways to fix my life when time started to feel normal again. That's how I planned to spend my day. I did many things, sometimes going in directions I didn't see coming, but I felt broken inside. For a while, I lost my way. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 132. What is love? Please don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. Learning that the woman you love has let you down can take a person to sad places. The daily routine can help hide the hurt with habits. Still, it may take weeks, months, or even years before you feel complete again. Many things can affect how long it takes for a person to move on from a bad relationship. My situation was different. I can't tell if I made my healing faster or made it last longer. I would say my actions were harmful, but that doesn't quite describe it. I discovered that I was pretty much unbreakable. My journey with drugs went on for a few months. I won't go into too much detail, even if I can recall most of it. I had many bad reactions to drugs. I could never get used to any of them. I tried all sorts of things, snorting, smoking, and injecting. A lot of the time, I couldn't remember what happened afterward. I would just wake up in the guest room. I think I might have overdosed a few times, but I can't be sure. I didn't really think about it back then, and that doesn't say much for how smart I was. I was missing something important. The time loop made me feel like I could do anything. If I had paused to consider what really happened if I died in the loop, I would have been more careful. Death is the end. I didn't want to find out the hard way. But as my journey with drugs came to an end, I found solid proof that I could die and still return. I was searching for something called adrenochrome. I had heard about it in a book, but being a bit more old-fashioned, I thought it was just a story. I looked it up online, and it turned out to be real. But finding some was a big challenge for me. Finally, I found a tip about a dealer who was supposed to sell it. First, I checked in with the guy who sold me my cocaine. He never remembered me, of course, so I had to take a little pill to show I wasn't a police officer, and I had to pay for it. He sent me to a person from the Philippines in Queens, who then sent me to a dealer named Smoke in Long Island. I thought Smoke was a cool name for someone who sold things that were illegal. Most had regular names like Bill or Tyrone. I was thinking I would see a skinny black guy or a white guy with dreadlocks, But Smoke turned out to be a 400-pound Jewish woman. So much for my first thoughts. We began the dance I was used to doing. I looked like what I was, a professional in my mid-20s. People had no problem selling me weed or cocaine, but when I asked for lighter drugs, they got nervous. I often suggested using a drug right there to ease their worries. I had already tried ecstasy for the guy selling cocaine, but Smoke wanted proof. I had learned not to try smoking anything. Every morning I woke up with clean lungs, so whenever I tried to smoke I ended up coughing a lot. To help with that, I took some speed she gave me. Once she was sure I wasn't a cop, she sold me the adrenochrome. It was in a small bottle that fit right in my pocket. I was about to leave when the police burst through the door. "Get down! Everyone on the ground!" By this time, getting arrested felt routine. I had been caught a few times by a hidden police officer while trying to buy drugs, but I learned to notice their signs better. I usually made my purchases at a hotel. Sometimes the drugs made me feel really strange, and a few times hotel managers called the police on me. I was also feeling a bit jumpy from the effects of the ecstasy and speed. So when they told me to get on the ground, I didn't obey. Instead, I reached into my pocket to grab the adrenochrome. In my confused mind, I was just trying to give it to the police. But they didn't know what I was going for. Bang! What was that? I felt odd. I looked down and saw a hole in my shirt. At first, there was no blood. I touched it gently with my finger. I must have looked really confused. Then I found myself staring at the ceiling. Still no pain. I felt empty in a way. I could hear my breath coming in quick gasps, but it felt like it was someone else's breath. The ceiling seemed to bend down into a sharp point. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 132. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. I had died. There was no question about it. If you had asked me if I thought I could die and then wake up the next day. From what I had learned about the time loop, the answer felt obvious. I would wake up again, but I really didn't want to test that idea. Well, now I understood. That was the end of my drug use. Not because it was risky. I had shown myself that it wasn't, as long as I was careful. No, almost losing my life during a police raid made me rethink my choices. I didn't like who I was turning into. My wife had hurt me deeply and made me doubt my worth. She made me wonder if any woman could truly respect me and be happy with me. I tried to convince myself that my past troubles in relationships were behind me. I used to struggle, but I thought I had improved. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. I knew Julie began to look for love outside our marriage because she wanted more. In the final years we were together, she always said nice things about me as a partner. Yet, she kept looking elsewhere. Did this mean I still wasn't enough to make her stay? I felt like I was on the run. The drugs were just a way to avoid thinking about my real problems. They didn't make me physically addicted, but I felt a strong need to escape through them. But that's over now. I decided it was time to focus on fixing myself after all that Julie had caused. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 133. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, no more. I knew how to begin. I went to work. Even when I was using drugs, I worked on improving my day trading plan. I didn't really need the money at the time, but making millions is hard to ignore, even if I didn't need it right away. The amount kept increasing as I got better at my trades. Eventually, I learned all the important changes in the stock market for July 15, 2016, and I could set up my trades in less than 30 minutes. I started to take action, but I actually had another reason to visit Broadwell and Marks that day. I went to see my boss, Ben Johnson. Ben was quite the charmer. He had many women he saw often. He was open about it. The women he dated understood that he liked to meet different people. They accepted it because they were dreaming of winning the golden ticket and becoming Mrs. Johnson, the wife of a young and successful Wall Street man. Ben often sought excitement, and I knew he sometimes skipped the usual way and just paid for it instead. I knocked on his door and stepped inside. Hey, Ben, do you have a minute? Of course, Sam. What's up? It's not about work. I was in the break room not too long ago when I heard you and Schmidt talking about getting someone to join Brad for his bachelor party. Ben looked a little puzzled. Yeah, I remember. Not the talk, but we did arrange for someone to be with Brad. Look, Sam, I'm sorry for not asking you to the party. It just didn't seem like something you would enjoy. No, that's not what I'm saying. You're right, it's not really my thing. I was actually hoping you could help me find someone to connect with. Someone fancy, Sam said. Ben was surprised. Where is this coming from, Sam? You act like you are happily married. I couldn't find the right words. I didn't want to discuss my problems at home. You know what? Forget I asked. It's not my place to pry. What's your budget? I can spend a lot, but I want someone who is very skilled. I want both smart and attractive. No foolish people. I know just the right person, then. But I should tell you, she's quite costly. At least $5,000. If you want to spend the whole evening, it's $15,000. Gloria is the best choice, but I can also arrange for a nice lady for $1,000 or $2,000. No, I replied. If Gloria is the best, that's who I want. I can handle it. Ben didn't ask any questions. He probably knew what I had saved in my account, but he was the kind of guy who respected my choices. I went to him because I knew he wouldn't ask too many questions. He would just help me out. I could have gone to any of the many bosses at Broadwell and Marks. Some folks on Wall Street even kept a list of escorts and dancers right on their desks. They did this not just for themselves, but to impress important clients. Gloria only takes clients who are referred to her, so I can't give you her number. I'll call her and give her your cell number. She'll arrange the meeting. Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate it. No problem, Sam. I know you're a good person. I wouldn't match just anyone with Gloria. She might stop talking to me. He might have been making things sound better than they were, but I didn't think so. I was known for being honest. This didn't line up with visiting someone like that, but I wasn't the kind of person to mistreat anyone. There wasn't much more to discuss, so I thanked him again and left. Now, I had a new problem. I actually needed to get some work done. I didn't want to upset Ben by leaving early and possibly messing up the connection he was trying to make for me. But it was okay. It wasn't a big deal. In fact, it had been such a long time since I really worked a full day at Broadwell and Marks that I'd forgotten a lot of the work I had done back then. Around 3 o'clock that afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? This is Sam Watley. Hi, Sam. A friend gave me your number. The voice on the other end was very smooth. You must be Gloria. I'm glad to talk to you. Mr. Johnson mentioned you might be looking for someone to accompany you. Do you have an event soon? She was careful. She wasn't ready to share too much over the phone. Besides, she usually worked with important people who liked to impress others. Something like that. I'm actually in a hurry. If you're free, I'd like to meet and talk about the details. You got lucky. I had a last-minute opening. I can meet you at La Chiffre in the Weston Times Square. Is 8 o'clock good for you? That sounds great, I said. I can't wait to meet you. I continued to work through the whole day. Usually I turned my phone off in the evenings because Julie would call if I didn't come home. Some nights, like tonight, I felt I might need to make or get a call, so I changed her ringtone to silent. I would need some cash tonight, so I went to a bank that was open all night. I knew how the stock market was changing that day, so it was easy to turn my small amount of money into a little fortune. The tough part was actually getting my hands on that money. Banks are cautious about handling money quickly. If I had lived in a smaller town with weaker banks, I wouldn't have been able to access most of my money. Luckily, I had a job at a brokerage that managed billions of dollars, and I used a bank that was one of our close business partners. Broadwell and Marks transferred a lot of money through this bank, so any account linked to them received special care. Even when my account reached several million, I was still just a small player. I could withdraw hundreds of thousands in cash without raising any concerns. If I needed more, I had a bank credit card linked to my account. Tonight, I took out $50,000. I arrived at the Westin early and rented their best suite. I didn't have time to buy a new suit, so I asked the concierge to get me a new shirt and tie, and they charged it to my room. They were there when I stepped out of the shower. I felt nervous and didn't want to get sweaty in my suit, so I relaxed in a hotel robe until it was nearly time to meet Gloria. I walked into the restaurant 15 minutes early and took a seat at the bar. Gloria hadn't mentioned if we would be having dinner, so I told the host my name just to be safe. Right before 8, I got a text from Gloria. Gloria, I'm almost there. I'm wearing a green dress with a silver design. Just as I looked up from my phone, I saw her. Wow! Julie was a lovely woman, but Gloria was on a different level altogether. The two guys sitting next to me at the bar stopped talking right away. Honestly, Julie was more my type. I like women who are smaller, and Julie was 5'5", and around 120 pounds. Gloria was a bit taller, about 5 inches more. Her shoes added 2 inches, making her just a bit shorter than my 6'2". She moved with a smooth grace that made me think she had taken dance lessons. She had a lovely figure, and her curves were appealing. But what really caught my eye was her face. She had the same chestnut hair and green eyes as my wife. But while Julie was pretty, Gloria was stunning. She could easily be compared to the famous beauty Helen of Troy. I found myself wondering, like many others who met her, why this woman was in this line of work. She could easily have been a model or an actress. I never asked her because it didn't feel right. I walked up to her. "Gloria? Hi, I'm Sam." She stretched out her hand to shake mine. "Nice to meet you, Sam." Instead of shaking it, I gently kissed the back of her hand. It just felt natural. She gave a small smile like she thought it was sweet. "Such a gentleman," she said. I felt my face get warm. "I'm sorry. I wasn't ready for how lovely you are. It seemed fitting." I thought she might have turned a bit red, too, but I pushed that thought away. This woman earned her living by going out on dates. "I can add your name to the list if you want to have dinner," I said. "Maybe," she answered. "Let's go to the bar and chat for a while." I am not good at making small talk. But with Gloria, it didn't matter. She kept the talk flowing easily, and I felt relaxed with this lovely woman. I understood why she could ask so much for her company. She was full of energy. After we chatted for a while, she brought up the reason for our meeting. "I got the feeling from Ben that you're not like my usual customers. I can see that. You haven't taken your eyes off me since we sat down." She leaned closer and softly said in my ear, "It's okay if you want to look. You'll see everything tonight." I swallowed hard. This woman had a strong presence that I wasn't used to. Sorry. There's a reason for that. When I was younger, I was really shy. I didn't look at people directly. I developed a certain reputation with the girls at school because I would look away when I talked to them. They all believed I was staring at their bodies, even though that wasn't what I meant to do. I really had to try hard to look people, especially women, in the eye so they wouldn't think I was being strange. "No need to apologize," she laughed. "Most days I like not being stared at. Let's go eat. But I think we should talk about this in a quieter place. Why don't we go to my room and order some food?" "I already have a suite. I wanted to shower after work. We can go whenever you like." I had been paying for our drinks as we enjoyed them. I left a tip on the bar and we walked out of the restaurant. We ordered food from room service and ate it at the table in my suite. We kept chatting about different things until we were done eating. I tried to let my eyes explore the room. When a woman shows that she wants you to notice her, it's important to pay attention if you want to be polite. It was hard for me to look at her amazing figure, but I managed to keep my gaze. From my past relationships, I learned that one of the best ways to make a woman feel appreciated is to look at her. Let me clarify. I don't mean looking from a distance or acting inappropriately. Make sure she knows you're interested, but don't say anything. Just let your eyes explore her face and figure, but focus mostly on parts that are not covered by clothes. The key is to let your eyes show that you find her beautiful. You are appreciating her, not as just something to desire, but as a piece of art. It's easy if you see, like I do, that the female form is a wonderful creation. When there was a pause in our talk, I leaned back and admired Gloria. I looked at her face, taking in her strong jaw, high cheekbones, full lips, and her unique nose. Her deep green eyes and curly brown hair caught my attention too. She stayed still, letting me look at her. I could see her cheeks turning red. Even someone who knows they are pretty loves to feel admired. "It looks like we are ready for the fun part of the night." "Sorry, but we need to discuss some business first," said Gloria. "We talked about the prices for a moment before I shared what I wanted to achieve tonight. I'm fine with the cost, but I have a special request. It's not strange, just a bit different. I want you to give me feedback." "Feedback?" Gloria asked, looking puzzled. "Most men are looking for a fantasy, not an opinion." "I recently had a hit to my confidence," I explained. I stopped for a moment, searching for the right words. "I'll get straight to the point. My wife was unfaithful to me because I didn't make her happy. I don't want to go into details, but I want to fix things and need a fair opinion." She looked worried. I'm really sorry you had to experience that. It must have hurt a lot to find out. I don't want to make things harder for you. I could see she was trying to find the right way to say something. I could see what was bothering her. I think I understand. You're worried that I might take things too far and then ask you if it was amazing. She laughed, a bright and cheerful sound. Yes, that's part of it. My job is to make people happy, and I'm really good at it. If I told some of my clients how they could do better, it wouldn't end well. I went and got the bank bag I had placed in the bedside drawer earlier. I pulled out 3 bundles of cash from the bank. Here's $30,000. It's yours, no matter what happens next. I promise I won't get angry at you for anything you say later on. Don't worry about having to tell me something flattering. The only thing that could let me down is if you try to trick me with a lie. But even then, I wouldn't get upset. I'd just choose to do business elsewhere. I'll remember that. Just a moment, please. I need to get ready. Gloria went into the bathroom. I walked around and turned off most of the lights, keeping a few on so it wouldn't be too dark. I took off my shoes and tie, then sat down on the bed. I felt nervous. Not just about what was coming, but also because it was the first time in almost 8 years I would be with another woman. I worried if I could really be close to someone new after my time with my wife. I didn't want to be a fake person, but deep down, I felt like my marriage was finished. Julie had hurt me so badly that I realized I could never be truly happy if I stayed with her. Even if I could find a way to forgive her, I would have to give up my own self-worth. I had loved Julie for most of my adult years. I would have done anything for her, but I couldn't accept any pain from her. My thoughts were cut short when a light came from the bathroom door as it opened. She walked over to me, swaying just a little. As I sat on the bed, she placed her hands on my shoulders. I was at just the right height to look at her. I avoided her eyes, not wanting to make contact. She leaned back slightly, pushing her chest out a bit more, and then gently brushed her knee against me through my pants. I can see you like what you see, she said. Why don't you open the rest of your gift? We had shared some personal time in the bedroom, but let's skip that part. I found it hard to focus while watching Gloria clean up. I'll be honest, when you first told me what you wanted, I wasn't very hopeful. To be frank, I thought you would be bad at it. But you surprised me. That was actually one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had with someone I work with. I won't say you were the absolute best, but you were definitely among the top. Either your wife has very high expectations, or she wasn't completely honest with you to cause pain. I can say from my own experience that people can say hurtful things when they're upset. I was surprised to hear I was being called bad, but in a strange way it felt like a huge burden was taken off my back. I didn't share everything with you earlier, I admitted. My wife didn't just say I was a bad lover, she wrote it in her diary. She used it as a reason to be unfaithful. She stopped saying it a couple of years ago, but she never stopped being unfaithful to me. So I thought I had become a good partner. But I needed another opinion, and maybe even more than that. But I didn't say that. It wouldn't be nice to tell this lovely woman that I was already looking ahead. As much as I had enjoyed being with Gloria, I also wanted to see if I could attract and please someone without having to pay for it. But that would come later. Well, in my expert view, you have nothing to be concerned about. Your skills were excellent, your touch was perfect, and your enthusiasm was very appealing. Different women enjoy different things, of course. If I could offer one piece of advice, it would be to try to speak a bit more. Your thoughtful actions were great, but women also like to hear you talk, just like you enjoy hearing us. Thank you, that's helpful. Honestly, I don't make a lot of sounds when I'm close with someone. I would have to really focus to express how I feel. That might make me feel a bit awkward, but maybe I should share more, talk about what I enjoy and give compliments. That sounds great, she said. Just be genuine, don't pretend, but let us know what feels nice, how much you are enjoying it. I smiled. This is what I needed, helpful feedback. For a moment I worried she might just be saying nice things to make me feel good. She was there to help me feel good, and I really thought she was being truthful. The escorts for her price were usually very classy and smart. If she didn't want to be genuine, she would have said no. And maybe I'm not the sharpest, but I didn't think she could pretend to enjoy it like that. After we finished, we dried off and moved to the sitting area of my room. We continued talking. Gloria shared some helpful advice with me, reminding me that I didn't need to worry about how good I was. I appreciated her words, even if I was a bit skeptical. Nonetheless, it felt nice to hear. After some time, we settled back into bed for a gentler moment together. She had plans to leave in the morning, and I knew I would be gone before then. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 133. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. Being with Gloria made me feel like my marriage to Julie was definitely over. I couldn't get a divorce while I was stuck in this time loop, but being with another woman seemed to end things for me. So, I started to focus on my life. Living the same day again and again felt like a kind of waiting place. I even thought a lot about what this situation meant in a larger way. I didn't really think I was in heaven or hell, but my life sure felt like one of them, if I let it. So what does a guy do with forever? I watched a lot of TV shows. I tried food at every restaurant I was curious about, plus many that I had never even noticed before. I went to all the movies, plays, and musicals in the New York area. I visited every museum, famous spot, and tourist site I could find. I used my new money to get into places I could never have gone to before. I spent money like it was nothing. I gave a lot to people on the streets. I tipped waiters and waitresses very well. I visited fancy shops and enjoyed being treated like royalty. I went to a club where people danced and spent a lot of money there too. I got bored quickly, so I did a lot of silly things. It felt freeing to know I could do almost anything without worrying about what would happen next. I practiced my skills with a garden hose. While others have their ways of bothering someone, I had my own. I got in trouble with Doctor the first time I tried. It wasn't as tough as the first. This made me think about something I wanted to achieve for myself. I needed to learn how to fight. I'm a big guy, standing at 6'2" and weighing 210 pounds. Being taller than most men, I was used to being one of the biggest people around, especially with my office coworkers. Because of this, I had never really needed to fight. I was too big to get bullied, and I was too gentle to be the bully. I had always believed that if I really needed to, I could fight back. Like many guys, I thought I had a lot of strength inside me that I wasn't using. I just chose not to get into fights. But Dr. Dick showed me that I was wrong about myself. Now, I wanted to change that. I wanted to beat him in a fair way, and for that, I needed to train. In a big city like New York, you can find anything you need. I had many martial arts schools to pick from, and I had enough money to get great lessons. My top choice was Krav Maga. I heard it was one of the most useful fighting styles for real-life situations. MMA classes were easier to find, but I didn't want to focus too much on wrestling, especially with someone I wasn't comfortable with. I felt uncertain about whether I would be able to learn. I was already in good shape, but I couldn't create muscle memory. Still, I gave it a shot. Maybe muscle memory isn't real, or maybe it has more to do with my brain than my muscles. Because each day, I easily picked up right where I left off. For a time, training for fights became my main focus. I spent several hours on it every day. I would train at one place for a few months, then move to another to try out their style. Once I could keep up with some of the more skilled students, I moved on to the next step. I didn't need to be the best, just good enough. I discovered something I didn't expect. I actually liked it. I had been going to the gym for years, but I liked the focused workout from fight training even more. It felt like I was sweating for a reason. Plus, learning how to defend myself was oddly soothing. The exercises to help with balance and coordination felt almost relaxing. I won't lie, I liked the fighting part too. Maybe I liked it more because I never felt sore or hurt the next day. Krav Maga is a mix of older fighting styles, but without any extra moves or showy actions. Because I loved fighting, so I thought I would try some traditional schools too. I visited a few, but I gave up on them after a short time. The teachers all wanted to correct me. They cared a lot about tradition. I liked the slow, calm moves that felt a bit like yoga. But when it was time to practice fighting, I always went back to the simple moves of Krav Maga. I even tried yoga for a few days. After all that stretching, they don't let you hit each other. That's boring. But it made me wonder if Ben knew a girl who enjoyed a little playful teasing. I met Cassie at the Westin when she was wearing some really nice yoga pants. Just when I was ready to stop looking for other fighting styles, I found a small Hapkido school above a Korean restaurant in the Bronx. When I first met Sung, the owner, I felt a strong connection right away. It was unusual. If he had been a woman, I might have said I felt a deep connection with her. But that's not the case. I'm completely straight. It really was odd. Sung didn't talk much. I never really got close to him. He was too quiet to become friends quickly. As I spent more time with him, I managed to skip some of the usual small talk and find out a bit about his life. Even though I felt a strong pull towards him, I had to accept that we couldn't truly be friends until the time loop was over. About that strange feeling I had. I figured it was because we both loved martial arts so much. Kenji had some kind of military background. He taught traditional moves and patterns, but he made them useful for real-life situations, adding other styles when they worked better. In a sad twist of the time loop's effects, I began to see Kenji as my best friend, but to him, I was just a new person he met every day. His dojo felt like my second home, a place I could go when I didn't have the energy to think of something new. I kept practicing martial arts. After some time, it changed from being just a way to achieve something to becoming enjoyable on its own. But I still wanted to teach Dr. Dick a lesson. Friday, July 15th, 2016, Day 297. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me, no more. I returned for my rematch after about 6 months of getting ready. I knew he had some kind of training. Now that I had trained too, I could see that he had decent skills, but nothing special. I had more than enough skills to outdo Sam 1.0, but the newer Sam was ready to take his lunch money and send him running home to his mom. I managed to get back at him a little, mainly using the garden hose. Most of my other tricks were light-hearted pranks. Since I couldn't really get back at him in a big way, I mostly played little jokes on Julie and her boyfriend that made me laugh. One time, I set up a meeting for Dr. Dick's wife so she could see them together. It was quite the scene, but in the end, it felt too real for me. I didn't want to have a serious fight. It just brought back my sadness. While I was stuck in this loop, I felt like I couldn't let go of my wife. I couldn't move forward with my life. For my own peace of mind, I knew I couldn't stay stuck in my feelings about my broken marriage every single day. So when I did interrupt my wife's happy moments, I often did silly things that made me laugh at their expense. But today was different. Today, I felt serious. I thought about finding a way to keep Julie busy. The neighbors down the street just had a baby. They used cloth diapers and had a service that picked up the dirty ones every few days to clean them. I wondered if a pile of those diapers would distract her. I realized that I might have a strange habit of getting messy things on my wife's face. Maybe I have some things to sort out. In the end, I decided not to do anything. I thought that if I seemed to be doing well against Peters, she wouldn't step in. If she grabbed him again, I wouldn't hit him from the side. I wanted an honest fight. If she grabbed me, well, the first fight showed I could handle getting hit. I walked into the house after giving the couple some time alone. I had taken this path many times before. There was Dr. Dick with my wife. I cleared my throat loudly. Harumph. They stopped moving for a moment. Then Julie began to hurry out from under Peter. She slid up the bed and tried to cover herself with the blankets. She looked at me with wide eyes, making soft, whimpering noises. Tears were already running down her face. I knew from experience that we could just stand here looking at each other for a long time if I didn't speak up. Julie didn't say things like, "It's not what it looks like," or "It doesn't mean anything." Instead, she kept repeating, "I'm sorry," in a worried tone. But I didn't come here to hear her say sorry. Dr. Dick stood at the foot of the bed between my wife and me. He stayed very quiet, probably trying not to make things worse. That was just what I wanted. I hadn't gone after him, so he wasn't trying to protect himself. I wanted to face off. I wanted him to feel angry. As I walked to the bedroom, I felt a lump form in my throat. I took a breath and spat it out in his direction. He looked shocked for a moment, then he yelled and charged at me. Peter swung a hard punch at my head. In the past, I would have tried to block or dodge it. This time, I moved my feet to get away from it. I stepped back, then stepped forward again. When I stepped back, Peter's punch missed me completely. Then as I stepped forward, I hit him in the stomach. Dr. Dick staggered back, leaning forward a bit. Now that I understood how to use my weight in my hits, my strikes were much stronger than before. I wanted to keep pushing. I stepped forward and hit him in the face. It wasn't a punch. Since Dr. Dick was easy to knock down, I gave him a hard slap instead. He looked more offended than hurt. He rushed at me with a series of quick punches. Now he was focused, making sure not to stretch himself too far like he did with his first swing. I was a better fighter than he was now, and my arms were much longer. I easily dodged most of Peter's hits. Dr. Dick was struggling more. I held back because I knew if I hit him too hard in the head, the fight would be over too soon. But I really focused on his body. I probably broke at least half of his ribs, and his whole side was turning black and blue. Peters was in a lot of pain. I think he would have wanted to stop if I had shown any signs of giving in. He clearly had some training in mixed martial arts. He kept trying to get close to me and grab hold, hoping to lessen my size advantage. Since I was focused on hitting his body, his hands were down to guard his stomach. I don't think he even thought about why I wasn't hitting him in the face. But every time he moved in closer, I made a quick choice and threw a jab at his face. I stayed clear of his chin and didn't put all my strength behind my punches, but every hit still pushed him back and made him dizzy. This guy was quick to react. I was more scared he would faint than that he would actually hurt me. Looking back, I might have practiced too much for this match. I was preparing for a big fight, but ended up having something like a friendly spar. I thought this fight would help me feel better, but Peters was a much tougher opponent than I remembered. I was thinking about ending it soon. I let Dr. Dick step back, giving him some space without going after him. I noticed him shuffling his feet. From our first fight, I knew he liked to kick. He hadn't had the chance yet, but now he seemed ready to give it a go. Even though Carl Douglas sang that song, not everyone knows Kung Fu fighting. Many things can go wrong when you're in a vulnerable position. You need to be a really skilled fighter to escape from a kick if your opponent knows their stuff. Dr. Dick prepared himself and threw a hard kick at my chest. I quickly moved to the side to avoid it. Hapkido teaches several combinations of 2 kicks. I kicked my left leg straight into his unprotected area and then quickly brought it up to strike his head. He'd realize how much that hurt when he woke up. Julie was still sitting on the bed, her eyes darting between me and the fallen Dr. Dick. She might have been surprised about how her husband suddenly fought like a martial artist. I almost wanted to joke about it. I had spent 7 years trying to make her laugh, but not this time. I had done what I needed to do. I was just 2 steps down the stairs when she yelled for me to wait. But as I told her before, I didn't want her sorry words. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 708. What is love? Please don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. Fighting Dr. Dick had ended up being a big letdown. I was happy I took that step, but I understood that the experiences along the way mattered more than where I ended up. I won't tire you with every little thing I did while stuck in that time loop. Before, I had spent a lot of time looking for ways to keep busy. My martial arts lessons showed me that I felt much happier when I focused on making myself better. I read a lot. I tried to learn to play an instrument, but I discovered I wasn't very good at it. I could hold a tune, but I was terrible at telling one note from another. I picked up new languages fairly easily. With some language learning programs and the many immigrant groups in New York, you can dive right into speaking with people. I learned French, Spanish, and German. But the first language I learned was actually Korean, which I never thought I would care about before the loop. I kept going to Sung's dojo a lot. Sung spoke English that was a bit hard to understand, but I got him to share more once I started speaking in his language. He also had a sister named Mi Suk, who was very pretty, and she didn't speak any English, or so I believed. I thought about getting to know her better because I found her very attractive. Once I could speak to her in Korean, she couldn't easily overlook me anymore. I discovered that she could speak English. She just didn't seem to like me for some reason. But I was still happy that I had learned the language. I read many different kinds of books. If I ever needed to catch up, I would know a lot about many things. I still made sure to take a day now and then to enjoy myself. I spent almost $200,000 to organize a fun street festival in Central Park. I set up tables and chairs with some workers handing out snacks and drinks. A big sign said, "Happy National Tapioca Pudding Day." I stood on a little stage surrounded by tall stacks of pudding cups. I used a loudspeaker to share my message. "Today, the best day of all, is National Tapioca Pudding Day. Come and get your free pudding. Everyone is welcome." Free pudding! I began my day with a truck full of pudding. I had arranged for many suppliers to bring even more throughout the day. It took a lot of money to get that much pudding and have it delivered in just one day. I hired dancers in light costumes and a DJ to play music. There were girls in swimwear having fun in small pools filled with pudding, really water mixed with cornstarch and food coloring. The police closed my event after a few hours before any of my extra pudding could arrive. "Sir, do you have permission for all of this?" "I wanted to, but I couldn't get it." "But the city is moving too slowly and pudding doesn't wait for anyone. We need you to close down now and clean this mess. You can't serve food without a license. It's just prepackaged pudding. It doesn't even need to be kept cold." The officer did not appreciate me talking back. "Sir, you are already facing a big fine. Don't make me ask again. Close it down." I nodded like I would do it, then went back on stage. "Hey, everyone, this man wants to take your pudding. This day will never end if you don't eat your pudding. Hooray for the pudding! Hooray for the pudding!" People in New York enjoy a good time. About 50 folks joined in my hooray for the pudding chant as I jumped off the stage and ran from the police. I grabbed a bunch of pudding cups from one of the tables and tossed them to people who didn't have any, until the police caught me. I spent the rest of the day in jail. The pudding gods were not happy. One day, a makeup artist from Broadway helped me wear a wig that had long, messy hair and a thin, fake beard. After that, I went to a secondhand store and found some old clothes that didn't match. Dressed the way I wanted, I headed to an open mic night at a trendy bar in Chelsea. I'd like to share a poem by someone I really admire. He was a doctor, a person who loved science, but his words reached deep into my heart and spoke to the child inside me. I took a moment to gather my thoughts. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. I had to think again about the hipsters. They let me finish my rhyme and didn't seem upset. They even laughed with me when I laughed at them. I felt a bit guilty, but I still did it a few more times at other hipster spots. Their funny jokes made everything more enjoyable than I thought it would be. Mostly, I chatted with people. I had been a bit shy when I was younger, and that made it hard for me to make friends as an adult. Now I had none. All the friends I had were shared with Julie, and I knew that most, if not all, realized that Julie was seeing other people. I wasn't close to any of them, so I didn't want to ask them about it. Honestly, I didn't want to be around that group anymore. Now, I was looking for new friends. I couldn't build a strong friendship in just one day, but I could keep an eye out for good people. These were folks I would want to share my life with if I ever got out of the time loop. Sung was at the top of my list, but there were others too. I met them and felt a connection. To them, though, I was just a stranger. It was hard sometimes to feel like a stranger to people I had met many times before, maybe even hundreds. Sometimes I thought about visiting my wife again, just to feel some warmth and care. I pushed that thought away by making a new plan. My parents had me when they were older, and now they lived in Florida, enjoying their retirement. Just a 3-hour flight, and I could be surrounded by their love. I also tried dating. I wasn't ready for a serious relationship, but I could use dating apps and go to clubs to meet new people. I found myself in situations I had avoided back in college, but I started to wonder if I had been too choosy. I had a few brief relationships, and sometimes I hired escorts. More often, I went on friendly dates with women who preferred to take things slow and not rush into intimacy. I believed some of them could be good for a relationship, but it's tough to know when all you have are first impressions. I spoke to my wife a few times. I wondered if it was really needed to talk to her. I already knew her deep thoughts and feelings from her diary. She would never share as openly with me as she did on the pages. I understood why she had been unfaithful, and I also knew how she felt about me. These feelings did not match. Being a person who often cheats didn't seem to fit with how much she cared for me. Still, I thought I should give her a chance. Maybe getting caught would help her see things differently. I spoke to her many times. I won't bore you with all her excuses. She did a lot of pleading and promised she would be faithful if I gave her another chance. Honestly, I only had a few questions for her. Let me share how our last talk finished. Julie and I were in the living room. She sat on the couch and I sat in a chair. She had cried a lot and was nearly done. I waited for her to use a few tissues before I could understand her clearly. Just as I expected, she never lied to me, but she didn't share much unless I asked. I had to make it clear that I knew Peters wasn't the first person she had feelings for. That always surprised her. "So, Julie, why did you betray my trust?" "Oh, no, Sam. Dr. Peters, he didn't exactly charm me, but he has a strong way about him. I know that's not an excuse. I can't really explain it. There's nothing that could justify what I did. That was true, but it avoided the bigger problem. And what about all the other guys before Peters? Julie turned pale. She was momentarily speechless as her hopes for fixing things faded away. She didn't argue with that. Did someone tell you? Who would tell me, Julie? How many of our friends knew? How many people think I'm a fool because of you? Nobody thinks that about you, she said, breathing hard. Nobody. Everyone cares about you, Sam. They wouldn't laugh at you. Some of them know. I've been seen before, but that's on me, not you, sweetie. Really? I asked. That's a nice idea, but it doesn't feel true. Nobody told me. They remained friends with you, even though they knew you were being two-faced. How could they respect me? I don't belong here. You all share a secret, and I'm the only one left out. They care about me? That's nonsense. Julie flinched when I called her that name. I had said worse before, but she wasn't used to hearing me speak with such disdain. Again, there was a long pause. These talks were mostly me talking and the rest just thinking. Sam, I understand what you're saying. I never thought about it that way. I just know that our friends have never said anything bad about you. I'm really sorry if I've made things difficult between you and them, but if none of them talked to you, how did you find out there were others? First, how I found out doesn't matter. Second, you are avoiding the question. Why? Julie took a deep breath. I'm not trying to avoid the question. I just don't know what to say. I've been thinking a lot about it. I guess the real answer is, because I could. I thought I wouldn't get caught. I believed I could enjoy myself without hurting you. That wasn't in her diary, but it felt true now. I doubted she would ever share why she began, if she even wanted to tell me. I read your diary. Julie jumped up and hurried to the bathroom. I could hear her getting sick in there. It took her about 20 minutes to calm down and come back to the living room. I thought she had cried all her tears, but she still had more left. I'm really, really sorry. I don't know what to do. She fell quiet. Yeah, that about sums it up. Do you still want to say that no one was laughing at me? So, you couldn't find what you wanted with me, huh? I don't measure up. No, I mean yes, you do. I just thought I needed something different. I was young and foolish, and then, when I didn't get caught, she took a deep breath. Sam, you do make me happy. If you read my diary, you must know that I stopped using that as an excuse. It was never an excuse, I shouted, hitting the coffee table with my fist. I broke the glass on top and cut my hand. I sank back into the chair, pressing my hand against the armrest. It would heal in time. Julie flinched. Is there no chance for us? I love you more than I have ever loved anyone. I will change. I promise I won't do that again, she said softly. Do you think you could ever forgive me and give me another chance? Could she really change? I believed she might be able to, but I could never forget how much she had hurt me. If a stranger had caused me this much pain, I might have reacted very differently. Yet a stranger could never hurt me like this, only someone I cared about deeply. Once you let people into your life, you have to believe in them. I can never share my feelings with Julie like that again. No, it's over between us. I know you care about me, Julie, but you're mistaken. You care about yourself more. You didn't care about me enough to put me first. You didn't care about me enough to be patient and give up what you wanted. All you had to do was wait, or even better, support me. You don't see things very deeply, Julie. I just wish I had noticed it earlier. Goodbye, Julie. Even when I was very angry, I never raised my hand to Julie. I was really tempted to, but I didn't for 2 reasons. First, I still didn't understand how the time loop worked. I knew I was living the same day again and again, but everyone else was moving on. One of my first ideas was that maybe there were different worlds. Could I be a key point where many futures split apart? Could my choices affect other people, even if they didn't affect me? I wasn't sure. But I didn't want to hurt someone just for my own amusement, especially if it meant they might have to deal with the results. But that was a pretty small chance. The second, and much bigger reason I never hurt Julie, was that I didn't want to be the kind of person who did that. My dad often said a line from a famous writer, Sigmund Miller. Your true character shows when no one is watching. I knew I shouldn't let my darker side take over just because I could do whatever I wanted without getting caught. I had to control myself, especially since I could easily slip away unnoticed. I'm not sure if karma exists, but I believe that some actions leave marks on a person. Also, hurting Julie wouldn't help me feel better about losing her. I would feel better if I could forget her and stop reopening old wounds. I even stopped bringing home the garden hose. I had to wake up just a short distance from my wife every morning. But one day, I looked back and saw that I hadn't really seen her in over a year. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 1382. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, no more. I feel embarrassed that it took me so long to understand the time loop we were in, or maybe I just didn't fully get what it was. I still don't fully understand it, but I think I get how it worked. I went to bed most nights. That sounds easy, but I didn't really have to. I woke up each morning feeling just as energetic and rested, no matter what I did or how late I stayed up the night before. So I didn't need to sleep at all, but I still did. Going to bed at the end of the day just felt right. Even if I couldn't see a change the next day, it felt good to take a break. As time passed, I found myself sleeping less. When I focused on dating and making friends, starting fresh became harder. New York is a bustling city, always awake, so I could easily fill my days and nights meeting new people. From the start of my time in the city, I sometimes stayed up all night. I used to think my day ended at 5 a.m. every night, and I would wake up at 5 a.m. on Friday morning. But when I started staying up later, I saw something new. Actually, I noticed two things. First, my day didn't really end at 5 a.m. It actually ended at 4:58 and 26 seconds. It was so close that I had never noticed it before. I didn't really understand what it meant, but it felt important. Second, if I stayed awake, my day would finish at 4:58 with a bright light. I noticed something soon after I got into the loop, but I didn't think it mattered. It was really quick. So quick that it felt more like a flash of light than real light. I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me as I moved from being awake to suddenly finding myself in bed. You need to know that I spent 99 days out of 100 in New York. If you could choose to spend each day in New York City or Trenton, New Jersey, which one would you choose? It was one of those special days I found myself in Trenton. I had picked up a book from Barnes & Noble. I planned to finish it that night so I wouldn't need to buy it again the next day. Like always, I was winding down in a hotel room. I read the last page of the book and then glanced at my phone to see the time. It was 4:53. There was no reason to try to sleep now. I counted down the seconds until my reset, then woke up the next morning. No flash. What's going on? I had come to see the flash of light as usual. Not having it made me feel uneasy. I stayed in Trenton that day, but still no flash. All right, time to test this. I went back to New York and stayed awake. There it was, the flash again. Now I was really puzzled. I used to think the bright flash I saw was part of my time loop, but now it felt like it was connected to New York in some way. It became the main focus of my day. I was just passing time until 4:58 a.m. and 26 seconds. I walked around to see if my spot made a difference. I noticed the flash no matter where I was in New York's 5 boroughs, but it seemed less bright the farther I got from Manhattan. In New Jersey, I couldn't see it at all. The issue was that I was still spending my evenings inside. I either stayed in a hotel by myself or went to a club or bar with friends. One evening, I chose to step outside at the end of the day. This choice changed everything. The flash still lasted just a moment, but being outside helped me see it more clearly. I returned to Trenton and sat in the courtyard of my hotel at 4:58. I didn't think I would see anything, but then I noticed something. It was very faint and came from the north. I only noticed it because I wasn't inside. The next night, I rented the top room of the tallest hotel in Trenton. At 4:58, I stood on the balcony looking towards New York. Friday, July 15th, 2016. Day 1403. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, no more. I slowly sat up in bed. I finally understood what happened at 4:58 and 26 seconds every day. It was over quickly, just a blink of time. It was so fast that it felt more like a feeling than a clear memory. But I knew what I had seen, a big cloud of smoke. I might be the first person to cry happy tears at the sight of a nuclear blast. I quickly realized that the explosion and my strange time loop were tied together. I had never thought that something outside was causing my day to start over every time, but there was no doubt about it. A bit of online searching backed up my thoughts. Even the biggest nuclear bombs ever created wouldn't have a blast zone that reached Trenton from New York. Depending on the winds, Trenton might get hit by the harmful fallout, but it wouldn't end my life right away. So if the explosion wasn't taking my life daily, why did I start over the moment it happened? The time loop seemed to link directly to the bomb. What made me very happy was that there was a clear way to break free from the loop. I just needed to stop the nuclear bomb from exploding. I quickly started my search for a solution. First, I rented a helicopter. I booked a flight from Trenton to New York. The people in charge thought I was an important passenger going in early. I made sure we would be 5 miles away from New York when the time came. At 4:55, I called the pilot on the intercom. I had given him a nice tip before we took off and mentioned I might want to see the sights as we arrived. "Can you hover here for a few minutes and turn a bit so I can see the city well?" "Sure thing, sir." "Let me know when you want to keep going." We were close to being thrown from the sky, but he didn't have to worry about that. Tomorrow would be better for him. When the bomb exploded, I was prepared. I could see much more clearly this time, but it still happened really quickly. I was not focused on the big cloud in the sky. Instead, I was staring at the ground, trying to see where it all began. When I finally noticed I had been looking in the wrong area, it was already the next morning. I went through this process 3 more times before I figured out it was somewhere in East Manhattan. That was as close as I could get to pinpointing the main spot using this method. The nearer I got, the more my senses were filled with strange feelings. That part was simple. Finding the exact spot was much harder. Whether on the ground or in the air, it was impossible to see anything from inside the area affected by the blast. Standing in New Jersey, I knew the blast was coming from the north. But in Manhattan, it was hard to tell. The sound was all around me. My aerial view showed it was on the eastern side of the island, but that area was so large, it felt like trying to find a needle in a huge haystack. If the bomb was set off remotely, it could be anywhere. I would have to check each building, looking in every room. I would need to check every car, trash can, and basement in Manhattan. I was ready to do it, but that was my last option. I believed that if I could find the spot, there would be some clue. I figured this was done by terrorists. While a foreign country might attack New York from far away, terrorists would be right there. To find the main location, I began with the places that were most likely to be targets for attacks. I walked through the streets of Manhattan at night, searching for anything strange or out of place. I figured the UN building could be a good target. I spent the whole day keeping an eye on it and continued to watch it as night fell. It was a large building, and I probably should have watched it for several nights to see every side. However, I decided to stop after just one night. There was simply too much security there. I didn't notice anyone trying to bring a nuclear bomb onto the property. I wasn't sure what I was searching for, but I hoped I would recognize it when I found it. Each night I checked a new place. I went to Times Square, Carnegie Hall, Rockefeller Center, the Empire State Building, and the World Trade Center Memorial. I also visited colleges, museums, and the offices of big companies. I spent a few weeks exploring Central Park. I looked for several months before I found something interesting. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 1531. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, no more. It was almost 4 a.m., and I was walking west on E57th St. I crossed Park Ave, but came across a roadblock. There were wooden barriers blocking the street. I checked the road in both directions. I could just see another roadblock on 58th. 56th St. was clear. I kept my eyes forward and saw more barriers on Madison Ave. As I walked to 57th Street, I looked across to Madison. More barriers there, too. The whole block was closed off. That's strange, but it happens sometimes. There's always some kind of building work in New York. Still, I didn't see any workers around, and the city usually only closes streets when real work is happening. The barriers took up the sidewalks, but New Yorkers usually ignore the rules about walking. There were a few people on the street, but not many at this time. I went around the barrier and walked slowly down the street, glancing at the buildings around me. When I was halfway to Madison, I saw something odd. There were two guys in work uniforms hanging around outside the building at the corner of 57th and Park. Nighttime was when the janitors and repair workers came out in New York. But these two weren't doing any work. They were just standing there. They weren't smoking or chatting. They weren't sitting down either. They were just standing about 30 feet apart. If it wasn't for their uniforms, you might think they were security guards. Ever since I stopped and looked their way, they had been looking right back at me. While I watched, one of them spoke up, but it seemed like he was talking to nobody. He glanced up at the building behind him, and I noticed a small device in his ear. Then I heard a loud noise, like a phone book falling on a table, and suddenly I was looking up at the sky. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 1532. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. I had been shot. The last time I was shot, it was during a police raid. I thought this time it might be worse because it felt like everything was ending much quicker. Perhaps a rifle. I felt excited that I might have discovered the right spot, but I needed to be certain. It was possible that I had just come across another crime happening. When I thought about it, it was surprising that I hadn't been hurt more times. I had wandered through almost every area of the city without worrying much about my safety. That night, I was walking along 57th Street again. This time, I stayed on the same sidewalk as the fake janitors near the building they seemed to watch over. I had noticed the night before that they didn't bother people as long as those people kept walking. They only went after me when I showed too much interest in them. There were only a few other people walking on that street because of the late hour and the barriers. I started to worry that my actions might have caused a big problem. Well, that wasn't my fault. During my time going in circles, I ended my life around 12 times. I only did this after I had already died once and knew I would return. I saw it like pressing a reset button in a video game. Sometimes I just wanted to give up on that day and start fresh. But I didn't take it lightly. I had to feel really sad to make that choice, but I had never hurt anyone else, not even a little. That's just not who I am. I felt a bit torn about what I was about to do. These men might not be the ones who caused the explosions, but they were definitely killers. I pushed those thoughts aside. Tonight, I was dressed in a big hoodie, which is different from what I usually wear. I moved past the first janitor after taking a few steps. As I walked along, I took my hands out of my pocket. To my surprise, I found my neighbor's Glock 17 there. I had only shot paintball guns before, so I didn't really know what to do with a real gun. Still, it's hard to miss when someone is so close, less than 15 feet away. I held the gun with both hands and shot twice at the man in front of me. I could see him begin to fall. I quickly turned and fired 2 more shots at the other man I had just passed. I aimed for the middle of his body. My first shot hit him right in the chest, but the second one went up and I saw a big piece of his neck fly away. For a moment, I couldn't move, but then the rush of adrenaline hit me. The sniper! I quickly ducked through the doors into the lobby. I heard a soft thud, just like the night before, followed by a loud bang as a bullet hit the ground where I had just been. As soon as the door closed behind me, I bent over and started to feel sick. Stopping terrorists feels clear-cut, but I wasn't ready to see someone die because of me. In front of me was a long hallway that led into the lobby of the building. I took a deep breath and raised my gun. I needed to check this building to see if the bomb was inside. I really hoped it was after I had taken down 2 men. Ahead, I could see the lobby. To my right, there were some elevators. In front of me was a small cafe, likely made to provide coffee for workers, but now it was closed and its windows were boarded up. To my left, the lobby extended too far for me to see clearly. I guess there was some kind of information desk and maybe some seating there. I carefully moved along the left wall and peeked around the corner. Oh no, I jumped back so quickly that I landed on my back as the corner where I had been standing started to crumble with bits of stone falling down. A steady stream of bullets hit the walls and floor, making a loud noise like a big saw. When I peeked around the corner, I caught a quick look at the lobby. There were some chairs and couches, and in the middle stood an information desk. Behind the desk was another fake janitor, hidden behind a huge machine gun. I'm not an expert on guns, but it looked like something that would impress even the toughest soldiers. It was set up on a stand with a lot of bullets ready to fire. The gun was making big holes in the door. I could hardly see through the dust rising from the concrete floor. Small pieces of rock were hitting me from the ground. I had to curl up and cover my head to shield myself from the flying rocks. My skin was scratched, and I was covered in concrete dust. I probably looked like a messy donut. Then, the noise from the machine gun stopped. He needed to switch the ammo belts. I hurried to move around the corner and take a shot at him before he could reload. But before I could reach him, flash, Friday, July 15th, 2016. Day, 15:32. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. Now I understood that I had found the bomb site. It had exploded sooner than expected. My attack must have forced them to set it off before they wanted to. That might be a problem. However, now that I had found what I was searching for, I didn't hurry back to the building to try again that night. From the very start, my plan was to locate the bomb and carefully think through my next steps. I hoped that if I could stop this explosion, it would break my cycle. But if the cycle ended, I needed to be ready. For one thing, using guns was not an option. New York has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. Saving a couple million lives would make people forgive me, but why make things harder for myself? I couldn't get a gun legally in New York City no matter how much money I had. Not in just one day. But if I took a gun from one of the bad guys, that could work. If I brought my own gun to the fight, people would ask too many questions. But if I used one that I had taken from them, I would be in a great position. The issue with the gun showed a bigger problem. If stopping the bomb ended the time loop, I would become very famous. Armed terrorists were getting ready to set off a nuclear bomb in New York City. There was no way to keep that hushed up. If I'm being honest, I might have been able to stop the explosion without anyone knowing who I was. I could get enough information to tell the authorities and let them handle it. I didn't, for two reasons. First, it was clear that the U.S. government would do anything to stop that bomb from going off, no matter the cost. What would I think if they destroyed a whole city block and everyone inside? I wanted to do everything